Welcome again, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Jinn and Tonic Show. I'm your host, Almighty Atheismo. Joining me today is Stopspamming and Atheist Ghost. Today's topic is reform. Certain Muslim scholars and public speakers and talking heads think that a more moderate to liberal form of Islam can displace the more conservative to extreme. We'll discuss. A very special guest was meant to join us today. There have been some last-minute technical problems. We may be joined later by Dr. Ibrahim Syed, who is he has a site, Islamic Research Foundation International, and he was supposed to be arguing the case of the moderate reform way of thought and doctrine, but we're not sure if we'll be able to sort these problems out. So, anyway, if anyone wants to join in and discuss things with the panel, just send a Skype contact request to the Jinn and Tonic Show on Skype. We will add you when we are ready. Please do not call into the show. We will call you. All callers to the show are advised that this show is broadcast live on Blog TV and recorded for later upload on YouTube. Also, when you call into the show, make sure to mute and minimize your Blog TV and focus only on your Skype video and audio. Otherwise, you will hear and see everything on a delay, and it will disorient you and disrupt the flow of the show. So, stop spamming. I know you've been desperately trying to get the doctor in, but if he can't sort out the technical details on his end, it's kind of a waste of time. So, what did you and the doctor talk about? You recorded an interview with him too. Oh, that was the other thing. Stop also recorded an interview with him, and for another series of unrelated technical issues, we can't show you that. So, sorry everyone.
Welcome to 2012. Again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to show that in spite of all the, let's say, traditional and conservative people that you normally get on sites and pages and forums and whatever, there are people that are actually quite the opposite. One of these is Dr. Syed, whom I wanted very much to introduce today, because he is somebody who is fighting for the renaissance of Islam, because he says Muslims are not generally stupid and they are being held back due to the most important thing, and that is the lack of critical thinking. So this is what came out of the interview. This is what I wanted him to tell us today in live, in person, but it's not supposed to be for some odd reason. So let's just take it from there. I'm getting a call from him. So, Atheismo, you take it.
Well, Atheist Ghost, what are your thoughts on reform versus conservatism? I mean, who are you familiar with who is arguing against the establishment but still arguing for Islam, but a fresh take on it?
Well, usually when you mention reformist in Islam, you always come up with the son of Kamal Banna, the founder of Muslim Brotherhood, and unfortunately all his opinion is always taken for a joke among Muslim clergy, because if you go back to Arabic, the word reform is tajdeed, and usually in Islamic context, when they mention reform, they actually mean reviving the religion. It's not coming with something new that can modernize the Islam and help it to cope with the new age. Reform is always mentioned about re-establishing the forgetting part of Islam, or the ethics of Islam, or the traditions of Islam. Only in the recent few years, or let's say starting from 18th century, that a couple of people tried to use the word reform to mean making Islam cope with the modern science and cope with the modern civilized world. Let's put it this way. Unfortunately, I don't see that this might work, because a lot of people actually are picking the harder version of Islam, since most of people believe that this is the pure Islam, as opposite to people who are trying to modernize Islam. I will put it plain and simple. It's as easy as, for example, if you go onto the Islamic Research Foundation by the doctor you're interviewing now, couple of articles trying to explain what angels are and how can we look to them from a scientific point of view. But this is totally opposed to the Islamic concept, which if there is a text, you cannot explain it. I mean, if Prophet Muhammad said something, you cannot come with your own interruption of what angels are if he already have described them. If the Quran says Adam was created from rotten mud, you cannot come and say maybe he have evolved. Plain and simple.
Yeah, you know, one of the first Quran I ever owned and read, it was, it had English on one side of the page and the original Arabic on the other, and it was translated by Zafrullah Khan, and almost every instance of the word jinn in the Quran had been changed to something else. A few of them hadn't, but there was a note in the foreword that said that jinn in the Quran were supposed to be a set of sort of despicable aristocrats and not these magical creatures, which blew me away. It's like, what do they think they're getting away with? Now, when I first read through it, of course, since many of the instances of the word jinn had been removed altogether and replaced with other words, it was kind of lost on me. But as I started to learn more about the lore and read different translations of the Quran, and then finally I went back and read it in its original Arabic, it became clear that, you know, the word jinn occurs many times, and it clearly refers to spiritual creatures from Arab mythology. And I didn't know what this guy thought he was going to get away with. Was he, when he was writing an edition of this that would be read in, foreign circles, was he just embarrassed about the incidence of these kinds of superstitions in the Quran, or what do you think?
Well, this is one of the things that actually reformists find it very hard. There is even the guy that I forgot to mention his name a few minutes ago was Tariq Ramadan, the son of or the ancestor of descendant of Muslim Brotherhood founder, and Tariq Adnan, a new Muslim clergy who's becoming popular among Arabs now on YouTube. There is a lot that they try to explain, not only in the Islamic teaching, but even in Islamic history. For example, the divide between Sunnis and Shiites and how they can cope with it. The weird Islamic myth that you have to believe in. It's really hard, and usually at the end, the people with the holy text or the holy scripture or the hadith end up to win. You can argue as much as you wish, but it's not. Period. Because in Arabic it's very plain and simple, and we can understand. It's not like we are reading a book that have been translated through 3 medium languages before we got it. So we know what it means, and we don't need somebody to come and give us a mythical understanding or try to cope up with the modern world. As simple as that.
Yeah, the thing is, what I found whenever you argue scripture with people who are non-literalist believers is there are a lot of acrobatics that they pull to try to make it mean what they mean, and that applies to all believers, really. Is they really try to sort of stare at it until it says what they wanted to say. But my take on that has always been that if an angel or a prophet or a godlike entity comes into your house while you're away, and someone says, hey, this entity was here, this angel was here, and it left a message for you on the fridge, and you read the message and it clearly says, go buy milk, who are you to say, well, I'm sure he really meant go buy eggs? And this is the source of just constant dissent and headbutting between myself, because when you don't follow a religion at all, you can afford to be as literalist as you want, and you have no reason not to be. As a matter, I saw a video put up of someone, a Christian, talking to William Lane Craig while William Lane Craig was signing these books, and this Christian was arguing with him about hell and how the Bible, the New Testament could be inferred that people don't really burn in hell forever. And I've gotten into an extended discussion with someone about that, where I drudged up all the original Greek about it, and it was just a non-starter. Clearly the New Testament says, the people who don't follow Jesus are going to burn in hell forever, weeping and gnashing of teeth, never ending, and so forth. And Craig, as usual, tries. He says these really ghastly things with a very straight face, but it's you have to hand him the point. He certainly does see. I mean, why would they? Like Jesus and his disciples and the apostles, why would they keep belaboring this point of hellfire if it was all just some sort of a metaphor or here's what it really comes down to. Does God stutter? I mean, I do sometimes. Sometimes I build a bad analogy. But does God stutter? Does he say one thing and really mean another? I mean, in those cases in scriptures like the parables that Jesus tells, he makes it very clear where the parable begins and ends for the most part. He says, hey guys, this is a parable. He begins the story, and it's obviously supposed to be a narrative to explain to the people gathered there the value system of the God of that scripture. But those who think that it's all allegory, or whenever they find out something is just too horrible or scientifically inaccurate, they say, well, that's just a metaphor, that's just allegory, those are just inspirational stories. How much ground can they realistically give before they give it up altogether? Stop, are you still fiddling with the Skype trying to get the doctor on, or can you join us?
I'm still fiddling. Give me another 2 seconds. It looks like we're getting it sorted out.
Okay, so I can comment on that in the Islamic context as well, to say the most famous sect of Muslims who said that there are always hidden meanings in every hadith of the Prophet, in every surah of the Quran, are the Fatimite, known as the Ismailite as well. They always had that hidden meaning, and that resulted in a new total different religion, the Doors of Lebanon as well, because they thought that there are hidden meanings and messages. There are Easter eggs in every surah of the Quran. Those people went all the way astray, but most Muslims totally agree that you cannot fiddle like this with the Quran. I mean, this is one of the problems that I always find when I debate with Muslims in English. You don't understand Arabic, and I keep repeating, no, I am an Arab. I'm a native Arab speaker. Check my accent. And they always try, when debating with Muslims, saying, no, you don't understand the text and the translation. I'm really sick with the translation, because I see them very polite, very nice to present to Western audience in general. However, one more thing, it's even with Muslims you cannot play that game, because it's very clear, and Prophet Muhammad himself said, the best among you, meaning the best Muslims, are the people who are among me now, and the second best is the second generation after them, and then the generation after them. So I always tell those people who try to come up with new vision, so do you understand Islam better than your Prophet? Because he haven't said so. He haven't said what you're trying to sell us now. Even the people who came after him did not have that tafsir for the Quran, did not have that explanation. And even the third generation after him did not have the same explanation you're trying to give now. So how come? It's one of 2 points. You know better than your Prophet and his followers, which couldn't be, or you know better than your Prophet is wrong, because he said the best people who knows Islam are the people who came after him. So you are actually in a dilemma, trying to say something your Prophet denied, or try to come up with a new explanation that your Prophet did not say so. Right?
Yeah. The Quran always seemed to me to be a pretty plain-spoken book, even for a scripture. And scriptures as a whole, I've read back when I first read the Quran, it wasn't with an eye towards debunking it. It's just I like classical scripture. Classical literature is what I meant to say. Excuse me. I've read a lot of early Christian writings. I've read various religious texts from both Islam and Hindu religious texts and so forth, and also Far Eastern, Confucian, Taoist, Shinto writings and so forth. The Shinto don't have a central scripture, but anyway, my point is, most of these books on religion and religious philosophy are very blunt, but because people can't cope with what it seems ostensibly to say, they will but they can't admit that any part of it is actually wrong. They really have no choice. They're backed into a corner with their conscience and intellect on one side closing in on them, telling them that some of these things just couldn't be true in their literal sense, and then the words written on the page closing in on them on the other side. And many of them end up in that place, at least in part in fault, due to the fact that they can't all be Nephilim frees and pretend for a long time that even Nephilim free eventually gave up his geocentric. Some people may not even know who he is. I think many of them do. For a long time, he said that the Earth stood still and the sun rotated around it. And then he finally changed that position and now denies ever having held it because he just, can't be wrong. He has to have that religious certainty one way or the other. But sooner or later, even the science deniers, even the evolution deniers and so forth, they have to give way. They're going, the overwhelming evidence, no matter how much they might try to pull a Seitenbruggenkate and say that empiricism and your senses and logic and all this stuff can't be trusted, sooner or later they're going to give under the weight of the evidence against a lot of these positions. And also, the consciences of these people are going to give way, except in those people who are so misanthropic that the idea of sanctioning slavery and genital mutilation and all this other stuff is something that they really do want. Sooner or later they're going to find themselves at war with the scripture, and it's a war in which they have to immediately surrender. But it's very difficult from my perspective. It would be difficult to find a compromise, but I don't think they even see it as a compromise. I mean, much like Nephilim Free saying, okay, I was a geocentrist then, but then denies it completely later, refuses to acknowledge his previous position. Each generation or each heterodoxy of a religion just tries to pretend like the previous editions or interpretations were either always invalid or didn't even exist. It's a giant game of doublethink, a la 1984. Now, you said that a descendant of the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood is a prominent reform speaker?
Yes, Tariq Ramadan.
But he's not affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood anymore, right?
No, actually his opinions are so outrageous that no party would like to get him involved.
In the West, I think the person who comes to mind when we talk about either moderate to liberal schools or people suggesting reform would be Reza Aslan. Are you familiar with him?
Not really.
Well, yeah, because I wouldn't be familiar. I'm not familiar with the person you're talking about. Most of his work seems focused on sort of making Islam palatable to non-Muslims. He does. I'm not sure if he really engages in a lot of debates or duels with more conservative clerics. Who in the Middle East, North Africa, Arabia, the Levant, South Asia, how much open dialogue is there between these two different schools of thought? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of media censorship depending on where you are. I mean, are there shows, Arabic language shows that have the Reform and Orthodox butting heads with each other frequently? And how does that typically go if it does?
Unfortunately, as you know, we are everything's run by the government, so we don't get to see that. But people know that there are, for example, in Saudi Arabia, Muslim Brotherhood will be considered moderate, but in Egypt they are in the middle, and you get the Salafis. So there isn't a lot of debates going in public, but most people know what Salafis are and what is Wahhabis are, and they give each party a name. But there isn't a lot of debates that go in public. People pick and choose depending on their own research or their own pick and choosing. But in public there is nothing that going on, at least on TVs and media.
Remember, anyone, if you want to join the panel and talk about what we're discussing or a topic of your own choosing, just send a contact request to the Jinn and Tonic Show, or if you've already done so, just send a message how you'd like to be introduced and what you'd like to talk about. Now, what about Quran-only Muslims? I mean, what kind of a force or factor are they in the modern day? Because, in Sunnah Islam, you of course have the hadiths. The Shia also have a separate set of hadiths, but there's more of an emphasis on the imams and ayatollahs giving rulings. But a lot of the rulings of the imams for the Shia and a lot of the hadiths on both sides have some pretty psychedelic imagery and a lot of the more offensive content from the standpoint of modern social values versus 7th century and the succeeding centuries' values. So, do you know a lot of Quran-only Muslims, or are they a tiny minority?
Well, I think they are tiny minority. I only got to debate them online, but I haven't met anybody in person. And during Islamic history, they keep on popping and disappearing again. These days, I've met a couple of them. However, it's always easy to debunk their ideas that we should only take the Quran only as the source of Sharia or Islam, because every time you debate with one of them, you can always pick at least a couple of thousand verses and tell them, okay, give me what does this verse mean, without going to hadith or seerah. You will never be able what it means, because sometimes the Quran is very vague. I mean, you can ask one of those, as we call them in Arabic, Quraniyin. You can ask them, where is the verse that says pray 5 times a day? You will never be able to find it. What is the verse that says how many rak'ah there is in a prayer? You won't be able to. How to perform a prayer? You will never be able to find it. So they will always have to revert back to a hadith or seerah. I don't think they have a point, and they are tiny minority. They keep popping up and disappearing in history.
You know, I was in a extended discussion through private messages on YouTube with a Muslim, and he got frustrated at one point. This was back before I'd read any of the literature. I just read the Quran itself. That's it, and I hadn't read anything else. None of the histories, none of the tafsir or hadiths or anything like that. And at one point, he said, look, this is getting frustrating. All I know, my friend, is that when we die, Munkir and Nakir are going to judge us, and on that day you better be prepared. And of course my response was, who the hell are Munkir and Nakir? Because of course that's not in the Quran either. And then I just went and looked it up myself, and there was a video by I think it was it Phil Hellenes or someone else? I'm probably thinking of the wrong person. I shouldn't guess.
Every Muslim knows those two people, the two angels who will ask you for.
Yeah, and there's some stories that all of them know it, but it's not in the Quran itself. So anyone who's just directed, to read the Quran itself is going to have no idea. And it seems like the vast majority of the custom, the lore, and so forth is external to the Quran. The Quran is to a large extent a hymnal, in that it extols the praise of the Prophet and of Allah, but it doesn't give a lot of specifics. It's not like Leviticus or Deuteronomy, or it's not like Joshua or Judges either. It doesn't lay down a lot of history. It just tangentially mentions things. It mentions a few laws here and there, but by far the overwhelming number of laws and customs and things are laid down in the Hadith or elsewhere. But yeah, I had no idea. Apparently, for those who don't know, when you die, a lot of really bizarre stuff happens. But it all starts at first. Your soul, I guess, just sort of loiters around your body. But at your funeral, after the last mourner has left and has walked 40 paces away, two angels arrive, and then they go through this ritual where they judge whether or not you are fit to go to heaven or whether you go to hell. And there's a questionnaire that they ask, and apparently there's some disagreement on which they ask. But I think they ask, which God do you worship, which religion do you practice, and who is your prophet? And if you answer any of them wrong, and I said, well, when I was in the discussion, I said, well, if I know the answers, do you think I could trick them? Because they don't seem that clever. If otherwise they'd be able to read my mind or whatever. But they said, no, there's no way you can trick them. And also, I asked them, because at this point it was just getting ridiculous, so I just started to troll them a little bit. I said, well, if they appear 40 after the last mourner walks 40 paces away, can I keep my tomb, constantly attended, like the tomb of the unknown soldier, where there's always a guy there, so that the angels can never come, and he just, could tell I wasn't being serious and discontinued. But it's such a bizarre story, and there's all these other elements, like, you get hit on the head with a hammer, and then, there's all kinds of weird imagery around what happens and how the story was related, and,
awesome description of torture.
Can I get Dr. Syed in?
If you can, yes, please.
Does it ring automatically?
No, I have to call him, sorry. I'm just sitting here. Yeah, someone's in the chat saying, don't forget about the snakes. I don't remember exactly what role the snakes play, but apparently there's like scorpions and snakes and a dead camel that when you kick it, your foot rots off. But I don't, it's been so long since I've read any of this stuff, it's all a little...
Well, it's the same as when you get crucified. They first cut off your hands and then you get crucified.
Well, the interesting picture I still remember is that your grave will close so tight in you that your ribs will hug each other.
Dr. Syed, are you with us?
Mm.
Yeah, the two angels, the night journey, all sorts of different things. Miraculous signs that are supposed to have been reformed. You know, these things are all mentioned tangentially by the Quran, or not at all. But okay, call failed. Anyway, so you know how prevalent are these kinds of beliefs? I mean, from Muslims who are either highly educated or living in the developed world, do you find that very few of them believe in these things in a literal sense?
It's amazing when you discuss these issues with Muslims that they have total separation of identity. There is the logical Muslim that lives every day, and there is the one that believes in Holy Scripture. When you speak to them about angels and jinns, it's like they use a different brain cells when it comes to dogma. Regardless of how silly the myths are, they are willing to accept it as a part of the whole thing. They have been indoctrinated since they were young. They have been taught this and enforced by the society to believe in this since they were young, and it's the whole culture in here. So it's amazing to me how they can have these two ideas in the same brain.
Doctor, you with us? I heard him briefly.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great, wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
So now that we got you, stop spamming. You are scheduled to handle the discussion, or start off the interview process. We had that video, of course. We've already explained that the video wasn't able to be broadcast as we planned due to last-minute technical issues. So,
well, you can add this later in the beginning, just as an introduction.
Oh, you're right.
Dr. Syed, I've already introduced you. What we are talking about here is Islam in the year 2012 and what happens in the future. And what I said is that I was very interested in your ideas, which culminate in what you call the Renaissance of Islam, because what you are propagating is that Muslims in general have a lot to catch up on because they are not trained in what you call anything like skeptical thinking. Can you just briefly outline your ideas?
Yes. The Muslim people, first of all, the population of the Muslims is about 1.6 billion in the world, and 65% of the people are illiterate, and then the 35% are literate, and the majority, 80% of these literate people are non-Arabs. So the Arabs are only about 20%. So my point is that the people have been misled by those people who know the scriptures in Arabic, because it is very difficult to understand the Quran itself even if your mother tongue is Arabic. So there have been many mistranslations or misinterpretations and misconceptions. Only I can give one or two examples, like in Surah number 4, verse number 34. They say the husband can beat a wife, and that word is daraba. That is not the correct translation, because there are 7 translations or 7 meanings for each word. So these people have kept what is convenient to them according to patriotic society thinking. So there have been a lot of misinterpretations. That's why people have been falling behind the advancement of the world. For example, in about 1857 or so, there was a scholar by the name of Muhammad Abduhu in Egypt, and he went to Paris and England, and he saw so much advancement of the people in these European countries. And then he came back and he said that he found Islam in Europe, but no Muslims. Then he came back to Egypt and he said, I find Muslims in Egypt, but no Islam. So these are one of the, what we say, reformers or Islamic Renaissance people. And then he had other people like, other one was Jamaluddin Afghani. And in India we have Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. And he emphasized the people in those days, about 1890s, to learn English, and so that the people can advance. They can go to England and study there. But people were thinking that English is a foreign language, so it is not compatible with the Islamic teachings. And not only that, if you go back to the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and they did not print the Quran for 200 years. The distance between the last printing in Europe to the Turkish capital of Istanbul was 200 miles. And it took 200 years for them to print the Quran with the printing press. So these are misunderstandings. Whenever, for example, in 1934, the microphone was introduced in the mosques, and they said it's haram. So anything you introduce, they will say haram. So it takes a lot of time to catch up, to these people. So there have been a lot of misunderstandings and misconceptions. So the Muslims have not understood their own religion, because there are a lot of things have been, particularly the traditions called hadiths. There are so many types of hadiths, like one is called the Sahih, which is supposed to be authentic. Then we have Hasan, which is good. Then we have Zaif, which is the weak. So people had not cut off the weak hadiths from the authentic hadiths. So they still today, the hadiths are going on. And even in authentic hadiths like Sahih Bukhari, there are problems. We say questionable ahadith in Sahih Bukhari. So what I mean is that people have not used critical thinking, because the way the Muslims are taught in the schools called madrasas is rote memory. You memorize the Quran, the hadith and the fiqh, things like that. So they never use the critical thinking. They never learned logic, physics, chemistry, maths. Even until today, if you go to the madrasas, there are about 35,000 madrasas in each country, like Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. So the mode of thinking and teaching.
Exactly. Dr. Syed, thank you very much for that opinion. But now, you have described this, but how do you see the way forward for people in the different countries today?
Number one is education. Education should be made compulsory and should be free up to the high school level until they graduate from the secondary school level. So that's number one. And number two is the part of the curriculum should be, English should be taught, and two, mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology. These should be included along with your religious subjects, like the Arabic and Quran, Hadith, whatever you want. Those should be incorporated along with this. Well, I call this as the integrated curriculum. And I have written an article on this too, integrated. And I have many articles on how Muslims can advance. If you go to my website, now it's working now, it's irfi.org or irfi.
Yes, so we will reference this. We will reference this later so people get a chance to look at this. But now, if you say that people who believe in the Quran should be taught critical thinking, what happens to topics such as biology? Because remember, we talked about this in the interview. How do you see people climbing over this objective obstacle of the Quran claiming that Adam was created by God himself and therefore evolution cannot be possible? How do you overcome this obstacle?
This is their understanding, is that the concept of the creation of Adam is there are two words in the Quran. It says kun fayakun, and God says be, and it is. Kun means says, and fayakun means it is. So people are thinking that Adam was created instantly like a magic using the clay. You see, that's a misconception. See, there is also, we can say that there is time, relativity of time is there in the Quran. For example, one verse says that one day of humans is equivalent to 50,000 years, or 500,000 years, like that. So there is a relativity. So these are the misconceptions, that instant creation of Adam, and that Adam was the first human male, and also the misconception that the Eve or Hawa was created from the rib of Adam. The Quran doesn't say that at all. These are the biblical and Jewish traditions, not Islamic
Exactly.
traditions.
Yes.
So if you,
And now, if you have somebody who listens to you, where you tell people, listen, there are misconceptions, what you are thinking in the Quran is wrong, what happens if those people come back to you and say, no, Dr. Syed, you are mistaken. We are looking at the Quran the way it has been interpreted for the last 1400 years. Why should you suddenly be correct?
because the Quran itself supports evolution. For example, there is a book written, the title of the book is called The Islamic Theory of Evolution, the Islamic Theory of Evolution, written by Dr. T.O. Shanawaz. Dr. Shanawaz is the Vice President of the Islamic Research Foundation International. So this book is available also on the internet. So he has explained very nicely, quoting from the Quranic verses. And not only that, these ideas of evolution by people like Charles Darwin were taken from the Muslim scholars for the last 1,000 years. And
okay, but
people
this
like
is
Ibn
looking at the Quran. But if you look at the hadiths, anybody will go and say, this is not what the hadiths say. I'm talking about the Sunnis now. They will definitely try and kill you on this. Do you have responses to that as well?
But again, the hadith, as I told you, is problematic, because the hadith was written 250 years after the passing away of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and we do not know what he said, because this has been transmitted for generations, so many generations, like 250 years is a long time. You see, if I tell you something, if it's not recorded, then you will tell something else, because this has been scientifically proven that what I tell you, you tell somebody, the whole message distorts. So this is proven scientifically too. So people have been adhering to what is easy for them, one thing, and what is, some of the early Muslims who are Christians and Jews. So they want to keep their ideas very strongly into the hadith. They could not put that into the Quran. Their ideas, like the Eve was created from Adam's rib, was impossible, because you cannot add or delete in the Quran, because millions of people have memorized the Quran, so that's very difficult. So they could not find a way. So they added through the teachings of like Abu Huraira, one of the companions of the Prophet, and he is quoted as having 5,000 ahadith memorized. And so they injected this ahadith into this. See, you have to use again analytical thinking to see if this hadith is correct or not correct. If you don't have that capability, and then, I cannot argue with this type of people. They have to have, first of all, training in logic, rational thinking, critical thinking, analysis. They should have, how can you get this? Because you have to study subjects like physics, mathematics, chemistry, biology. If you don't have this, you have only religious foundation of rote memory, then I cannot help you.
Atheist Ghost had a comment. Let's let him jump in.
Well, I would like to say that, especially when it comes, for example, to the myth of creating Adam, the first man, it's very clear in Arabic. It even describes in detail creating Adam from rotten mud and God whispering to him and giving him his soul and the whole thing, and asking the angels to bow to him. That has nothing to do totally with the evolution. I mean, I cannot understand how you can cop that with the theory of evolution. There are other myths in the Quran that is explained in detail. Like, for example, Istawa al-Arsh, and world being created in 6 days, and the 7th day God rose to heaven. His throne was on water. How can you couple that with the modern science? It's very clear Arabic. A regular Arabic speaker, without even need to the Quran tafsir, can understand these stories without even needing somebody to explain these words for him. I cannot see the possibility of copying theory of evolution with the Quranic description of how the first man was made, or how the first woman was made from the rib of Adam. How can you couple this with that?
Again, you see, these are the old concepts people have been taught. They had to think differently. For example, if God created from clay, the evolution also says that the creation was from the clay too. The evolution will prove that the creation was from clay and water. The Quran very clearly says that every creature was made from water. The evolution says the same thing, the water, the clay. This is all part of the evolution. So we have, inshallah, we have the next year, May 2013, there is a presentation of Dr. Shahnawaz on the Islamic theory of evolution. If there is anybody wants to oppose him, is welcome to make a presentation of this. I have already sent the email to everybody inviting to make a presentation opposing him. We'll welcome this debate. We are not stopping. You make your presentation, we make our presentation. I'll tell you how it
Professor Syed
can be understood. How the Quran can be understood.
Professor Syed, you know that the hadiths are clear that says that the people who understand Islam are the people among the Prophet and then his followers. So if none of the Prophet never said anything except literally what is mentioned in the Quran, that Adam was created from clay by the hand of God, and then God from a single breath of him give him life. So it's very clear that there was no evolution. The story is very clear. There was no evolution. There was no
I have
physical
to
process.
stop you here. How do you know the prophets? How do you know that the prophet said that? It may be possible that somebody added these words after he passed away 250 years later.
How about
Were you
the
not
Quran
present?
itself?
You were not there when he said these words. Were you there? You were not there.
Can I interrupt
Okay.
both of you?
So-
Obviously, as we've established, I don't know if you were listening before, the hadiths play a major role in the religion. Obviously, they are not unassailable, the way the Quran is considered unassailable by Orthodox Muslims or even unorthodox Muslims. But for the major Sunnah schools, the madhabs, I don't know the proper Arabic plural, I apologize, the debate on the hadiths has been settled. You know, they settled. The two Sahih collections are considered, perfectly edited, and the other four major collections have various weak and a handful of inauthentic hadiths. But when you first start discussing Islam as a non-Muslim, Muslims are very quick to say, well, I'm not prepared to listen to you until you read the hadiths. And so after a while of that, I said, okay, well, I guess I have no choice but to read them. And once I started reading them and bringing up that subject matter, many of the Muslims I talked to were quick to say, well, that one's inauthentic, that one's inauthentic, that one's not true, he didn't say that, and so forth, until finally, I got to the point where I only ever used Bukhari. I just didn't bother with any of the other collections because the others, they were too quick to say they're unreliable. And then I had Muslims saying, oh, well, that one from Bukhari is inauthentic. And I would say, well, wait a minute. What school do you belong to? And they say, well, I belong to the Maliki school. And I said, well, how can you belong to the Maliki school and think that there's inauthentic from Bukhari? That doesn't stand to reason. It would just stop me in my tracks. Now, as you said, the hadiths are problematic. They contain a lot of stuff that is, if taken literally, just could not be true or can be considered extremely bizarre or offensive. But, of course, it really boils down to, when you look at any hadith, number one, is it accurate? And number two, did the Prophet or the companion in question actually say this? So, at the end of the day, do you and your organization or people of the same reform-minded school as yourself, are you essentially striking it out as your own madhab in terms of reviewing all of these hadith? Does your organization have a full commentary on which are Sahih, Hasan, Da'if, or outright inauthentic? Have you gone back and completely notarized these with your own findings and thoughts?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
We are not going into the hadith at all. We will go by the Quran because we have written articles about the Quran, how the Quran supports evolution. There are articles at our website. I think somebody who wants to argue with us should read these articles to get some ideas what we are talking about. So the Quran is very clear, and we have no dispute with the Quran. And a lot of people have a lot of things with the problem with the hadiths. You see, because the hadith was written 250 years later, and a lot of things have been added in that period by the early Muslims who were converts from Judaism and Christianity, and they added their traditions into Islamic tradition, like that Eve was created from Adam's rib, things like that. That Adam was created. You see, so we had to look into the Quranic aspects, because for the last 1400 years, 1000 years at least, there are people, Muslim scholars, have written about evolution. And there was a guy who wrote I can't remember his name right now. He wrote a textbook of animals, and he wrote on evolution also. So like Ibn Khaldun has written, and Rumi has written. So there are so many scholars, and all these are listed in the book of Dr. Shah Nawaz. And now he also says that Charles Darwin got ideas about evolution after reading the books in Arabic. You see? So there are a lot of books.
Explain something first. I just need to explain something. We are not Muslims, okay? We are just used to talking to Muslims, which is why we are playing devil's advocate, because we are talking today about how Muslims can accept the 21st century and reform of Islam. So you are one of the people who is representing the reformist movement within Islam, and you are one person who brings the drive for Muslims to educate themselves, to change their way of thinking, to engage and embrace critical thinking, which is something that we don't have. So please don't misunderstand us now that we are trying to criticize you. No, we are just used to arguing with Muslims, which is why we are sort of bringing you the arguments that we normally hear. So please don't confuse this now as criticism of you or your movement, okay?
No, what I'm telling you is this, that we Muslims are having problems, lack of education, lack of critical thinking, lack of opposing points of view. This is what is happening. I tell you one thing, when you talk to a Muslim, is hijab, the covering of the hair or the headscarf, is there in the Quran. They say yes, it is there, but they never went and read that verse. I guarantee that, $1 million. Nobody went and read the verse, what it's exactly. They simply say it is in the Quran. They don't know where it is in the Quran, which verse it is, which surah it is, which chapter and verse, and what exactly the words are. Nobody knows, I tell you that. Even the scholars, I challenge them. I written an article, the Quran does not mandate hijab or headscarf. And in the last line is that I'm challenging Muslim or non-Muslim, man or woman, to prove that the Quran mandates covering of the hair. This is, even the scholars, they have not read word for word. The word face and hair don't occur in this verse at all. This is the pity. They want to hold on that I am the winner, no matter what. There is a saying that my chicken has one leg. These people are holding to the attitude that my chicken has only one leg. You see the point? They don't want to be defeated at all. They are not open-minded. They do not see the other point of view. This is the problem with the Muslims.
So, in other words,
see,
go ahead.
When Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, the majority of Muslims denied that he ever went to the moon. They say it is a blasphemy. You know that?
Well, it just shows people
he landed
West and East have a lot in common, because we have a lot of people who say the same thing for different reasons.
True.
That really humanizes them.
You see, moon is...
We have the same. Someone in the chat.
People think moon...
Go ahead. Yes.
Professor Syed, if you take the hadith and seerah from Islam, you literally left out 4/5 of Islam, because Quran is not clear itself to explain itself. I will give you a very simple example. There is a verse on Quran that says, don't perform prayer while you are drunk. And there is another one that says, don't drink because drinking is a work of the devil. How can you tell whether Muslims are allowed to drink or not if you don't know the historical context and tafsir, which is which ayah or surah came before which one. Also, if you read the verse 459, it says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول, which literally states in the Quran that you have to obey the Prophet. And all Muslims agree that hadith is a source of Islamic dogma. You cannot say, I'm not going to take the hadith out of context. And if all Muslims agree that headscarf is as it is now, if you come and say, no, it's not in the Quran, that means you are totally something else. You are the outcast. You are not the Muslim. They are the Muslims. If all Muslims agree on something and you don't disagree on it, they are not the one who's wrong. Plus, there were 1400 years that Muslim got to build on the dogma, right?
I tell you what, we can remove all the hadiths, still we can be Muslim. I tell you how I can do that. There is a difference between reading when I learned how to pray the salat, I did not read the hadith. So nobody ever reads the hadith to learn how to do the hajj or the salat. Okay? How did you learn the salat? Let me tell you. Did you read the hadith?
Yes, I have a comment about this. You will never find in the Quran how to perform salah, but you find hajj. Give me the verse in Quran that says how to perform the salah, the prayer, the
That's
namaz.
what I'm telling you. That's what I'm challenging you. Did you ever read the hadith? Did you read hadith to do the salat? How did you know? How did you know how to do the salat?
From the seerah. Seerah is how the followers or companions.
Did you read the seerah? Did you read the seerah?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Did you read the seerah?
Yes, sir. The seerah.
What? I mean, as a child, you read the seerah and did the salat?
No, I'm not saying as a child I read it. My people taught me how to do the salah. But according to how Muslims perform the salah is from the description of the companions of the Prophet, how he used to perform his prayer. However, if we just following your argument, if we follow your argument, we will never find in the Quran how to perform the prayer. There is only description.
That's what I'm telling you.
So how
telling you that how did the Prophet know? How did the Prophet know how to do the salat? You tell me that.
Well, he alleged that he had divine revelation, so his wouldn't come in any of the books.
No. That's what I'm telling you. How did the Prophet know how to do the salat?
Right, but we're not all getting visited by the angel Gabriel. But anyway, can I quickly? It seems that there are three major sources for custom and moral law and things that constitute Islam. The first being the Quran itself, the second being the extra Quranic literature, the Sirah, the hadiths, and the various histories and so forth. And then last, but certainly not least, are the people of the community, which, as Atheist Ghost said, that's where he learned it. He didn't learn it from any book, probably not even the Quran. He probably learned it as a child, and the vast majority, certainly in illiterate places, they have no choice but to learn it from their parents. So that's almost certainly where they get it initially, and then once they reach adulthood, and if they reach literacy, then they go back to either the Quran or the Quran and the other books and relearn these things or refine their knowledge, or at least understand where it comes from. Like learning a word before you look it up in the dictionary, I'm sorry, what did you have to say? Doctor,
what I want to say is this.
Okay. Go ahead. Your mic was muted.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
You see, Islam is a way of life. You understand?
Yes. Your
so
volume
there are many.
Your volume's cutting in and out a little bit. Could we do a quick audio test? Just go testing.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but your mic was cutting in and out. Please continue.
You see, Islam is a way of life. It pervades the whole life of an individual. Now, what we need in Islam, there are religious components and secular components in the religion of Islam. You got it? So, when the Prophet taught whatever pertaining to the rituals of spirituality, we'll take that. But whatever the Prophet said regarding science, we cannot take, because I tell you, the Prophet himself, according to Hadith, one time the yield was less of the dates, because the Prophet said, do not pollinate the dates. So afterwards, when they did not pollinate the dates, the yield of the dates was very, very low. Then he asked the companions why the yield is low. They said, you told us not to pollinate, so we did not pollinate the flowers of the date palm trees. So then he said, this is not my area. That means the biology and sciences. So this says, this is not my area, and you go ahead and do whatever you did before. So he acknowledged his weaknesses, So he was not that he was infallible. He had his own weaknesses. So when there was a war called the Trench War, there was a companion, Al-Rumi, his name was Salman Farsi, and he advised the Prophet to do the trenches, to dig the trenches, so that, he accepted those things. So he was not, like a divine being. No, he was a human being. So he knows his limitations. So as far as this type of things concerned, the Quranic interpretation of the creation of Adam and all that is beyond his means. He cannot do that.
Okay.
Because he is contradicting the Quran if he said this. Nobody can contradict the Quran, you see, even if you're a prophet.
Okay, yeah, so, from my understanding is, not every Muslim will say that, he was the perfect man. Many that I've found will say that he is the paragon of morality, but on non-moral issues or on statements that weren't revealed to him through the angel.
There's the problem again. They were attacking him for marrying Hazrat Aisha.
I'm sorry?
The Western people are attacking him now, the Prophet, on the ground that he married Hazrat Aisha, his third wife, when she was a young girl. And this is in Sahih Bukhari. And she was 6 years old, and then when she conceived the marriage, she was 9 years old. They are using the hadiths to attack the Muslims. You understand? They are using the weapon against Muslims themselves, the hadiths.
Well, I'm certainly guilty of that. I don't think of it as attacking, but the fact of the matter is,
there's no limit.
Well, the fact of the matter is, as I said before.
No, I'm telling you. No, they're criticizing, attack.
Well, okay.
What I mean is, it is a weapon they are using. So, as I told you, we always keep low the traditions because we don't know the authenticity. And the Quran, there's no problem. So we have to interpret the Quran. And also I have been telling the scholars the past 1400 years, as I'm telling, I wrote an article called Muslim Scholars Are Not Infallible. You understand? Mm-hmm. Everybody is a human being. Everybody can do mistakes. So simply because you are a scholar of the 1,000 years ago, and people venerated it doesn't mean anything. For example, Isaac Newton was attacked by Einstein. He wrote the theory of relativity in 1905. He was 25-year-old young kid. He was a clerk. He was not a physicist. He was not a professor of physics. In Zurich, in the patent office in Switzerland, he was only 25-year-old. He wrote the theory of relativity. And everybody put him down, shot him down.
Yeah. Well,
so what my point is...
I'm sorry. Yeah, if you, for example, don't take the hadiths at face value, I'm not going to argue or say, oh, well, you must defend this hadith. I don't, it's just like different sects. I don't tell a Shia Muslim that he must accept this or argue against it.
Hadith can be taken for your. No, what I mean is you can take hadith for example, to conduct your religious life. You can say how to pray, how to do fasting, maybe even how to do Hajj or those things. That's fine. But when it comes to secular sciences, it doesn't hold water.
So it seems like you have, whereas most Muslims of the four major schools, they have two criteria. They have whether or not it contradicts the Quran. If they're looking at an individual hadith, if it contradicts the Quran, it's wrong. And then second of all, they have an elaborate science or process of checking these and evaluating them. But it seems like you have a twofold process wherein it's if it contradicts the Quran, wrong. If it contradicts what we observe, also wrong. Is that an accurate analysis?
No, No, my point is this: we have to go by the Quran and understand the Quran, because I tell you the simple, very simple way I'll put you this: the universe was created by God. Okay? The Quran was revealed from God. So the two sources are from the same originator, from God. So the sciences, what we are studying, is studying the universe. So if you know the truth by studying the universe, the science, then the revelation which comes from the same source, God, they should not contradict. If the universal study, if the study of the biological senses tell me that the creation was made, the living beings are created by evolution, then the Quran should also support evolution. It cannot contradict, because God contradicting himself. You understand my point?
I think so. But
Yeah,
like
that's
you said people use the hadiths to attack. I don't like to think of what I'm doing as attacking when I offer counterpoint. From my perspective, it's just like arguing a political issue or something. People get very passionate, but it's just, sometimes it's
No,
like
listen.
the religious person's
Listen,
word for criticize
hadith-
is my word for criticize is their word for attack.
Hadith is not the divine origin. No, Hadith is not of divine origin.
Mhm. Yeah, we can agree on that. I mean,
So you cannot compare apples and oranges.
right, exactly. But what I was saying is, originally, as I said before, I read the Quran and thought, okay, now I'm prepared to discuss this. But then they said, no. You have to read the Hadith. And then as I was reading the Hadith, and again, I don't expect you to defend them because you say they're, that's not your prerogative. You don't have to defend them. So I'm not going to go through various Hadith if that's not your thought process. But I do remember thinking, as I read through Bukhari and so forth, I thought, why on earth did practitioners of this religion point me to these books? For example, I'm reading about the night journey. I'm reading a verse that says that Adam was 100 feet tall, and various, or that eating 7 ajwa dates makes you immune to curses and things. And I remember thinking, why would they point me in this direction? They must have thought that I wouldn't actually do it, because there's so much here that, as you say, I don't think of it as attacking, but if you prefer that term, I mean, if I was attacking Islam, then this is like this massive cache of ammunition, and they themselves have pointed out to me where to find it, because there's just a lot of room to work with, even in just Bukhari alone, much less all the extended.
I tell you one thing. I have to tell you this. Bukhari himself collected 600,000 ahadith, 600,000, out of which he rejected 99% of them. He himself rejected 99%. So the total hadiths are 7,325. Out of that, if you remove all the reputations, it comes like about 3,000.
Yeah.
So, what's the point? He must have retained out of the 7,325 some of the bad apples, or he might have thrown out a good apple out of the 99% he threw out. So it is. You see, he is not a divine. He's not perfect. He's a human being. That's what I'm arguing you.
Mm-hmm.
Muslim scholars are not infallible. He was a human being, and it took him like 30 years or so to go and collect from person to person. So what was his criteria? It was called sanad. Sanad means transmission, and he was tracing if this transmission can be traceable to the Prophet. Did the Prophet say? This is liable to error. And matan is the text. Is the text correct or not? So there are two problems. One is called the sanad, the link to the Prophet, and secondly the matan, the text. And also it has been going on for so many years. And he collected after 250 years and rejected 99% of them himself.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, any other questions?
Stop or Atheist Ghost.
Yeah.
If you have any comment left after that, I'm going to bring in our first caller, who's been waiting a long time.
First caller.
First caller? Okay. All right. Here is our good friend Shantanu Padmanabhan. I can never pronounce that in its regular cadence, but I think I can get it mostly enunciated correctly. I don't know if I'm putting the emphasis on the right syllables. Shantanu Padmanabhan.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. Namaste.
Hello. Yeah, we spoke last time, if you remember. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do, and we can hear you.
Okay, great. I had a small anecdote to share and also a question to ask. I always used to wonder if these internet debates regarding atheism against religion were of any use. I always wondered that because I thought, okay, fine. You know, people like Bill Maher doing the religious thing changed me from a theist to an atheist. I've heard a lot of people say the same thing about Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, but these are on a big scale. You know, but I wondered if these relatively smaller shows had any impact on changing religious people's views on their religion. You know, but last week I received a comment on YouTube that actually made me realize it does, because there was a person who was commenting on this video that Hamza Andreas Zortzis had posted on his channel. Accusing P.Z. Myers of dishonesty. And there was this particular person who replied to one of my comments on that page saying, I was a big follower of Hamza, and I really thought he was talking, what do you say? He wasn't bullshitting, basically. And once he started watching the Magic Sandwich Show, he realized how a lot of people constantly reinterpret these verses to basically mean something that it doesn't. And also, given how vague these verses are, it isn't in any way a proof of divinity, you know. And so he eventually realized that his faith wasn't, was kind of, he was just holding on to it because he'd grown up with it. And he actually became an atheist. I just thought I'd share that with you. So these kind of shows do make a difference.
Well, I'm really quite flattered to hear that. I mean, I think that our show would have a proportionate influence with the audience. Of course, we only ever get a handful of viewers. I think if we had more people, we would stimulate, obviously, discussion amongst more individuals and have a bigger footprint. But I mean, a lot of things that become successful in the long run have a humble beginning. Certainly, our presentation is incredibly sloppy. You know, we're not very, people can see my desktop as I stream because I don't have two computers to put it on. I often stammer and ramble. We have non-stop technical issues. But at the end of the day, I've stand by the overall quality of the discussions that have taken place. I've really had an episode that I was not proud of. Some people have complained recently. We got a couple complaints. One was that on the previous show, we were arguing against a gentleman from India who was talking about the growth of Islam in Europe and the West, and they said that we were being too politically correct in downplaying his concerns. Another criticism was that I was turning the show into like an educational podcast, which from my point of view...
I read that. I read it.
Yes, go ahead.
I disagreed with the person who said that, because I thought you made quite valid points on that topic. You were less. I mean, a lot of people have this Islamophobia. Think it's justified. It really isn't justified. You guys, in no shape or form, are being politically correct. You are merely pointing out that there is no evidence for most Muslims in Europe having this, ultra-conservative Eastern Islamic view of their own religion. And you were right. There is no evidence for that, and in fact, there's evidence to the contrary. So actually, I would disagree with the people who raised those comments, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, it's two different discussions to say, is the sky falling or is the sky not falling? And then the other discussion is, do you want the sky to fall? Now, in the case of, ultra-conservative Muslims taking over the world, I don't see that happening. I don't see that they're going to make that Islam as a whole is going to make inroads of that breadth in the first place, or that if it did, it would be of all of the hyper-conservative or extreme bent. So I just don't see that happening. I'm not trying to, by downplaying those fears, I'm not trying to say that I'm okay with it or that I'm welcoming an invading force or anything of the sort.
Exactly.
What is the question?
Oh, sorry. The question was, I was watching the Magic Sandwich Show earlier this week, and a gentleman brought up the issue of anti-natalism, and I don't think it was quite appropriately addressed on that show. I thought he was really, he was just taken off air quite quickly, and he wasn't really given a fair chance to argue his point. And also, I don't really think the panel members on that show really addressed his arguments or provided any substantial arguments themselves. And Thunderfoot actually dismissed that as a stupid argument, which it really wasn't. It really wasn't.
I am so glad that you brought this up, because I used to co-host on the show, and I watched that, and I just so wanted to get off the... I mean, I watched it later. I wasn't able to attend to the show itself. Okay, so to bring Atheist Ghost and the Doctor up to speed so they can participate in this, what he's talking about is a gentleman came on to another show like this that has more of a focus on Christianity and religion in general. And what he argued was, in essence, that because all sentient living beings are bound to suffer, that it's unethical to bring them into existence in the first place. And therefore he argued, against anyone ever having children again. There are some people who call themselves anti-natalists who are for really strict birth control, but they're not really anti-natalists in the sense of the etymology of the word. He says no more people should be born. Stop or Atheist Ghost, do you want to talk about this?
No, it's just that you need to focus on this, that it's only due to suffering.
Exactly.
Well, that's not a new idea, by the way. There were ancient Parisian religion that had the same concept, that people should stop breeding because you are bringing more human to earth. And they believe that there is gods of good and gods of the evil, and everyone is born with the two in him. And to stop that fight going on forever, we should all stop breeding. And maybe that's why there are no more of them around. Actually, it's interesting because I have a theory as well, because I don't believe the story of creation, which is God hanging around with the angels, and then there is a bit between him and Lucifer, who will have more friends at the end of time. That's sounds as interesting as the concept that we should not we should stop breathing.
Now, Dr. Syed, I know this has nothing to do with what we were discussing, but you're free to comment.
I didn't get it. What was the question?
He's referring to someone else who brought up a discussion on another show. This person says that we should not have any more babies ever again. We should just let the species go extinct, because every time you bring in a new being into creation, you're assuring that it will suffer at least some point in its life. So he says it's unethical to make new people because they'll sooner or later suffer. What are your thoughts on that?
This is the theory of evolution, struggle for existence and survival of the fittest.
No. What it says is, in this planet, if anybody is born on this planet, any god will make people suffer sooner or later, whether it be an earthquake, a tsunami, or whatever. You will suffer. This is why some people are saying, no, we cannot bear it anymore. We will not put children into this world where children will only suffer. And they are saying, no, we need to kill the whole species of humanity because there is too much suffering on this planet.
Can I just quickly add?
Well, let the doctor come back, and then
Sure,
we'll go to Shantana, excuse me, sorry.
In suffering, we become strong. We become wise. So if there is no suffering, then man becomes like satanic. No control. Then man becomes, he declares, I am God. So suffering shows that how humble you are. So you become
this the humility factor.
Yeah, exactly. So otherwise you declare you are not stoppable. It's very difficult. That's more dangerous than to have the struggle. So I will go for struggle than dealing with people like dictators or non-stoppable devils. So everybody will have to suffer.
Unless they are born.
Like Saddam.
That is the argument. If they were never born, then they would never suffer. And that's the argument. So you can avoid the suffering. That is the argument that the anti-natalists posed. But also I think it boils down to essentially the motivation for someone to live, which they briefly brought up on the show. Essentially the panel members were saying that they personally would have lived and suffered and also have enjoyed all the things that they have enjoyed rather than to have never lived. So there is a motivation for life there. And they briefly touched upon this, and they were saying overall, maybe right now you feel so, but by the time you die, and if you really gave it good thought, you might actually think this was not worth it. And I guess so it boils down to the motivation to live. But I think you can put a pretty good probability figure on whether your offspring will have the same motivation to live as you do. I mean, despite the suffering. And I think if I'm not mistaken, obviously this anti-natalist who came on the show, he's an artist. He's not committed suicide. And he's not worried about the law, obviously, so he can commit suicide because he takes heroin. I think he claimed on the show. But anyway, so obviously there is some motivation for him to live his life as well. So I'm not sure I entirely followed his argument through and through. But I guess if there is a motivation to live, then and you can put a good probability figure on whether your child will live, given that he will be raised under similar circumstances. Wouldn't that be okay? To then have an offspring, if you know. I mean, if I was in, say, a really, really bad part of the world and I had no money, and my area was struck with famine and so on and so forth, then maybe having a child would not be such a good idea due to the same reasons. But given that I'm in a well-off society and so on and so forth, maybe it's not such a bad thing to have an offspring.
Yeah, that's the thing is. There are some people who use the anti-natalist label who aren't really anti-natalist. They're just for, really what I would consider common sense birth control. That is, don't bring kids into a place where they're going to be completely miserable. I wish, however, that anti-natalists of the draconian birth control would call themselves something else. For example, I know people who are describing themselves as anarchists or anti-statists. And they don't say, no, you don't understand. When I say I'm an anti-statist, I mean I want a limited state or a smaller state or a state that has been reformed in some way. No, they say no state entities, So I wish people would be a bit more clear when they adopt a label for themselves or something like that. Now, an issue that came up in the comment section of the vids when they were posted were people saying, well, if you're of that point of view and you think that life isn't worth living because of the misery or what have you, why not commit suicide? And, some people, of course, will say that in a very sneering way. It's like, well, why don't you just go kill yourself because you're getting on my nerves? Others, I think, mean it in a more sober tone, which is, why not find the most painless way to end your life, and then you kill two birds with one stone. You end your own life, which you claim was an unethical act to begin with, and then second of all, you certainly ensure that you'll never have offspring because you'll be dead. But on the counterpoint to that is that it's very different to say, it's very different to prevent and to undo, and I think that has merit. Does anyone else have an additional comment?
Just in case, we have been joined by some people. We are a show that is concentrating on the spiritual aspect of Islam. We are looking today at the aspect of how Islam is being changed over the centuries and what Islam is going to do in the 21st century. So what we're doing is we're talking about the different possibilities that a religion such as Islam is being given in the 21st century. We have some experts on the panel, we have visitors. If anybody has a question to the panel, just call in using Skype.
Doctor, you had a comment?
Yeah, about this struggle, I was telling that there is a philosophical view that we have dark night, and then we have glorious morning, and then we have the afternoon, then we have evening, sunset. So it's a cycle. So life is a cycle. We go through difficulties, we go through good times, bad times, we see death, we see sickness. This is what's going on, and this is part of life. So there is no easy way for life. Even if you have easy way, that's a disadvantage also. So we have to have this. There are so many examples. We have 4 seasons, like winter, spring, summer, fall or autumn. And we also go through stages like babies, we are adults, we become old, we become sick and die. So these are there in nature, you see. So we are not exclusively isolated in this instant. It's there for all living animals. They all go through this.
Now,
even,
here's the thing. I can't imagine I can't imagine myself adopting the full-blown anti-natalist position myself, because and the reason I don't is because I don't believe in the sort of eschatology that Christians and Muslims and many other religions believe in. That is, when people die, there will be a set of criteria where they will receive either an extremely bountiful reward or an extremely horrible punishment. Now, when the guest on the Magic Sandwich Show was calling in, he was talking about suffering in terms of physical pain versus comfort, and depression, sadness, anxiety, and other harmful emotions versus joy and ecstasy and contentment and so forth. But of course, none of us who don't believe in this, or none of us who don't take these religious precepts and the supernatural for granted, we don't think of things in terms of heaven or hell. But I have to say that if there were a real heaven and if there were a real hell, it would be enough to make me adopt the anti-natalist position, because I don't think that bringing someone into the world when they might be happy sometimes and sad others, comfortable sometimes and other times, bump their knee, scrape their elbow when they fall off a bike, I really don't think that that's the end of the world. I think that I reject outright the sort of monism that he was engaging in, where he was focusing on pain as the only aspect of the human experience or the experience of sentient beings that's of any consequence. I flatly reject that premise, so none of his other arguments follow, because I reject it. But if I was about to bring a child into the world, and I thought that there was any chance at all, no matter how remote, that he would end up in a place where he would suffer forever, then that would be a deal breaker for me. If I thought that there was any truth to Christianity or Islam, I would say no children should be born, because if 99.9 children went to heaven, which is not the case according to most Christians and Muslims that I talk to, apparently narrow is the way, and etc., etc. If there was even the slightest chance that this person would suffer forever, then I don't think it would be worth it. I mean, it's not like if someone dies of a horrible disease, their suffering's finite. If they suffer from depression, their suffering is finite. If they, any of the many problems, even the truly horrible. I mean, even the people in the concentration camps, once they got gassed, their suffering was over. And I don't mean to be ghastly by downplaying it, because it's certainly not downplaying. What I'm saying is, even the worst, most excruciating torture comes to an end. The notion that people could be thrown into some alternate dimension and be tormented forever, just sobbing and writhing about, and often due to criteria that from my perspective don't make any sense, then I would be an anti-natalist. Shantanu, do you have any more comments before we let you go?
That's it, actually. Thank you very much. And also, stop spamming. I'm sorry to have misread your tone last time, but so yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Any more comments on that subject before we move on?
Well, I will add, usually a simple logic is the one that sells to the masses. Growing up in a Muslim society, this is what I've been told. Yes, you should have as much children as possible, because Prophet Muhammad would like to pray and be happy with the number of his nation during the Judgment Day. And regarding the suffering you go through life, this is now this is interesting part. If you are going through suffering, be patient. That's God testing you and testing your strength, and you will be rewarded for your patience. And who gives patience in life will have patience from God in the afterlife. And if you are blessed, now be careful, because this is another test from God, and you should be careful because it's also a test, and you're going to be punished for it in the afterlife. That's it, as plain and simple as we've been taught in classroom. So whether it's pain or enjoyment, it's still a test from God.
Doctor, did you have another comment on this subject before we bring in the next caller?
About the children, you see, if the parents can provide a good quality of life to the children, that's fine. You can have 1, 2, 3, whatever your ability is, to provide a good life, good education.
Professor Syed, it says clearly in the Quran, and don't kill your kids خشية إملاق, being afraid of being poor. So that's very clear in the Quran. لا تقتلوا أولادكم خشية إملاق. So even the condition that you just put. Even the condition that you just put, if you can provide for them, is totally the opposite of the Quran says. Now that's not hadith, that's a Quran.
Now the Quran says, do not kill the children. That means children who are already born. So why don't kill them, but give them good provision, good life, good quality of life. Give them good education. That's what the Quran means. Do not kill because you cannot provide. Don't kill because you cannot provide. It says you work hard, man, because you already produced a child. It is your responsibility as a father to work hard and get money, put food on the table, and give them good education. That's what the Quran means. That's the meaning of the Quran. And you are a lazy man. You don't want to make good provision to your family and children, and so you want to kill them. That's wrong.
But usually that verse is used to mean that even contraceptives are forbidden in Islam, that you should not limit the number of kids.
No, that is your interpretation. That's your personal perception. It's not objective. It is subjective.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Ali, who has a bone to pick with our guest today. We're just waiting a second for it to connect. Sometimes
you need to dance and sing just to bridge the gap.
Ali, are you with us?
I am. Give me a second though, because I got to shut off the block TV. Okay. All right. So I am here. So I have a few questions for the professor. The first one's kind of a qualifier, so just bear with me. In what capacity are you here? And by that I mean something like, can you actually answer any real specific questions, or are you always just going to refer people to, you know, your website and stuff like that on the show?
Whatever knowledge I have, I can say right away. If I cannot remember, I refer you to our website, because we have put 6,000 articles there, and we want people to, you know, acquire knowledge. You see, that's a good source.
I understand that. Of course, and I understand that. My question is more, if I ask you a specific question, can I get an actual answer, or will you just kind of refer to some other?
If I have the answer, I'll give the answer. If I have the answer, I'll give the answer. Otherwise, I'll refer you to our website.
Okay. So my first question then is, do you know how old the oldest manuscript of the Quran that we have is? The actual oldest one. Do you know how old it is? Oh, Professor, I think, is the professor gone, or? Is anybody there?
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay, all right. I think we may have dropped the professor there, Atheismo.
Yeah, sorry about that. By the way, you look different.
Ali, where are you going with this question?
So I just, because he seems to make an argument saying something like the hadiths are not true because we weren't there when they were written down and all this kind of stuff, and I just want to see what the difference that he sees is between the way the hadiths were done and the way the Quran was done. Because to me it seems like you're going to make an argument.
Is revealed by a God, by a divine creator, and the hadiths are human-made.
Well, I mean, it's then how does he actually interpret the Quran? Because a lot of the Quran doesn't make any sense without the hadiths. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. These stories have to be elaborated on, and the only way to explain them is by using hadith. So, I mean, there are whole sections of the Quran that you cannot even understand the context unless you go back and read the hadiths and the seerah. So how does he do that?
Okay, if I understood this correctly, he says it's taftaki. The Quran is all we have. I mean, I agree with you, yes, but at the moment, the Quran is all we have, which is being revealed by a divine being of whatever origins. The hadiths are definitely man-made and therefore can be rejected.
Well, that's actually not true, because the parts of the hadith that are explanatory are actually also divine revelation. I mean, according to
where'd you get that from? There's only 40 Qudsi hadiths which are revealed. The others are all man-made.
Quickly interject something. I stepped out just for a moment. I had to. Did the professor leave, or was it more likely a technical problem? Did it?
No, it just suddenly dropped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so he didn't necessarily rage quit on us, right?
That's right.
Okay. All right. That's all I want. I'm sorry. Please continue. I'll be right back.
Sure. Yep. So I mean, it's obviously technically this is true. Technically, there is only very few that are but in at least traditional Islam, it is boldly said that the hadith sahih is also revelation. I mean, if you don't say that, then you've really got nothing in Islam. I mean, there's really just nothing else there.
Yeah, but just because somebody says something is revealed, doesn't make it so, does it?
Well, then, okay, so then if he says that the Quran is revealed, then why do we have to accept that? I mean, he puts himself into a place where he's arguing against a set of texts, but not applying the same rules to the text that he's then interjecting himself. Why is either one revelation?
Let me play the devil advocate since he's not around. Well, the Quran is the revelation from God, and it says in the Quran He will protect it and nobody will mess with it, as opposite to the Hadith. That's
okay, so who says the Quran is revelation?
The Quran itself.
Okay, so some Hadiths also say that about the Hadith itself. If you can use something to prove that something is revelation, then aren't you just making the same mistake but in a different text?
Well,
that's his argument.
The Quran says it's revelation from God and He's going to protect His own revelation. Nobody will mess with it. But there is no hadith that says nobody will mess with the hadith. That's his argument.
Okay, so we cannot find a single hadith that says that hadith is revelation.
No, you cannot find a single hadith that says nobody will mess with hadith.
No, not mess with hadith. I'm not interested in mess with hadith. We're now talking about the sources of revelation that are being used, okay? And what I'm saying is that he says the Quran is revelation and the hadith is not, okay? Others say the hadith is revelation and the Quran is revelation, okay? How do we distinguish between one and the other? If some hadiths say the hierarchy is also revelation, okay.
So where does it say that the hadiths are revelation? I've never seen that.
I am positive that it's very easily found because, I mean, you hear very reputable Muslim scholars repeating this. People are put down as kuffar if they argue against position.
وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. Even the Quran says وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. He only speaks what the divine wants him to speak.
Right, but here's the question. The question is it true, and then second of all, did the Prophet actually say it? Now, if you're working under the formula that if the Prophet said it, it's true, then it still doesn't necessarily mean that any individual hadith, even if declared authentic by the hadith science as they call it, still doesn't mean that it's necessarily those are necessarily his words. Looks like Dr. Syed, are you back? Well, anyway, we'll continue. Hopefully, he might be sorting something out. Ali, go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, my point is this. Okay, you're now in a position where you're saying that the Quran is a revelation and that Hadith is not revelation, and it completely can be disregarded. Okay, and now what I am saying is, right? Okay.
No. My understanding is that there is a hierarchy. That the Quran is 100% a revelation by a God. It was transmitted via an angel to Muhammad and which found its way straight into the Quran. Now, the rest is all what happened 250 years later, what Muhammad said, what Muhammad did, what he provided in the form of guidance.
Okay, this is exactly
Muhammad,
my point. Okay,
God.
but this is
and then people interpret this as saying, well, Muhammad was the tool which Allah used, and therefore it can be seen as coming straight from Allah. But this is interpretation.
Okay,
the
point taken.
hadiths are not
Point
in
taken.
any way revelation.
Point taken. Okay, so now my problem with that would be is okay. So now your problem with some of the hadiths is the amount of space that is separated between the time they're put together and what they actually say. This is what I understand the argument is now.
No, the argument is, if I understand Dr. Syed correctly, he says the hadiths were concocted 250 years later, where somebody called Bukhari collected hadiths, which are sayings,
But somebody called
amount to
those
something like
Quran.
600,000, and then 99% were dismissed, so that we only have a couple of thousand left. So
Okay.
somebody decided which is correct and which is not, and these are humans.
So how is this any different than saying Uthman collected the Quran, they discarded some surahs and they kept some? How is that any different than this?
Okay,
How is
between
this
you
any
and me,
different?
there is no difference.
There is not a single
Again,
difference in this.
since Mr. Professor Syed is not around, let me try to answer that. Quran, at least majority of Muslims, they will disagree with the fact that Uthman dropped anything. For them, Quran is as revealed by God. No single character has been changed. So they believe that Quran is the revelation of God. It's protected by God. Nobody have ever messed with it. However, the hadith, anybody could have come and said, Prophet said so and so. That's why Quranis, like Mr. Or Professor Syed, are trying to say, that's why we're sticking with the Quran. Period.
Okay. So I mean, it seems to me like a major case of special pleading. He sets up this rule that these guys can fake this text, but these guys can't fake this text. And I just don't understand how that works. This is special pleading in its utmost. You set up this rule that, hey, if a bunch of guys collected it and they had discretion in what they've put together, then it doesn't work. But except for this one case where the oldest manuscript, the oldest manuscript that we actually have is 100 years after the Prophet's death, and it's not even consistent with some of the other ones founded not that much further. And so it seems like a major case of special pleading, and you should be called out on that.
Yeah, but what you are doing is you are applying reality to everything at the moment, which you can't do.
Okay. The other point that I would have made to him was, do I understand that he is saying pretty much that we can dismiss all the history, we can dismiss Muhammad's doings, we can dismiss the Sahaba's doings, and the way they followed the hadiths and the Quran, and with all these atrocities that we now look back on and see that way, okay? Why don't we just disregard Muhammad, the Quran, and all that, and listen to Professor Syed, since he seems to know what Muhammad meant better than everybody else?
No.
Why doesn't
the distinction is very clear. Now, come on. The distinction, you know the distinction. You know that people consider the Quran to be revealed by a God, and you know that the revelation stops right there. You have the 40 Qudsi, and that's it.
This is not. I know. I mean, and this is not just anecdotal. Okay, by their own admission, they agree to what the Sunni scholars are saying because they call themselves Sunnis. You know what I mean? And the people who are they endorsing outright say that hadith is also revelation. Islam is not the Quran. Islam is the Quran and the Sunnah. It is not just the Quran. It is outright outrageous to then turn around and say that that's all been garbage. Professor Syed knows better than everybody.
Well,
so why not?
But he's making the standard distinction between the two. Everybody knows there is a hierarchy level between the Quran and the Hadiths. Come on, you need to accept that. Please give them that much. What he is saying is he's taking that and saying, if we look at only the Quran, there are ways of modernizing Islam if we go and reject the Hadiths. Because if you go into the Hadiths, it's 100% clear,
I mean,
you can never modernize Islam.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. disagree with that. Just talking about reality and what has actually happened. And they need to say that for all, that they've just been completely bullshit, and Professor Syed is now going to just recreate Islam, and we're going to go forward with a new Islam that's nothing to do with it.
It's Renaissance.
Yeah, Mr. Ali, just take it this way. Even if we go for the sake of argument and accept what the Quranis are saying, we will only take the Quran. Actually, they will fall into major problems than just trying to prove that the Quran is right and Hadith. I mean, as have you stated before, there are sections in the Quran that needs Hadith and Seerah in order to understand. You need even the sources of revelation from the Seerah to know what that surah is talking about. You will. I just asked Mr. Syed. You can never find a verse in Quran that tells you how to pray. 5 prayers mentioned a day and their timings, but not how to pray them. A lot of things not mentioned in the Quran. So I think literally it's 4/5 of Islamic dogma is taken out if you drop the Hadith. But what Mr. Syed here is saying is like he will do some cherry picking on the Hadith. Whatever fits his, whatever he see fits, he will pick from the Hadith. Whatever he see doesn't fit.
This is fine. I just want to say this one.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep. And this is fine. I don't say that he cannot do that. I'm not saying that. But let's just call a spade and say that he's creating his own new religion. It's not the Islam that has been going on for this far. Let's just say that, hey, this is Ibrahim Syed's madhab. Because that's what it is.
It's Renaissance.
Yeah,
Renaissance.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Okay, now, I don't know what the problem is. I'm going to try to hang up on him and call him again. I really want him back because, we can only represent his position so accurately. It's just like anything else with dogma. There's matters of external and then internal consistency. If he says, if he takes for granted that the Quran is revealed, and we play along at least for the time being, I don't want to go back on that granted premise unless we treat it specifically as a separate thing. But if we play along and say the Quran is revealed and the Hadiths, were not revealed by the angel. Okay. Yes, but there's interruption constantly.
And that's fine. Let's do that. But let's then just call it a new mazhab, and let's call it, there already is a mazhab called Quranists. Why doesn't he just join those guys and just drop the hadiths altogether?
Yeah. Well,
I don't understand. Like I said,
okay, how many Muslims do you want to piss off? How do you go about?
All of them.
Okay, how do you
believe me, I've already got enough death threats as it is. This really doesn't make a difference. Go on.
Anyway, I'm sorry. This was something that I brought up with them at the beginning. Is if I was of this mindset, what I would do is I would write a definitive modern book that plays the same function in Quran-only Islam that the hadiths and the tafsir and the surah and other things play. Because obviously, like you said, not everything that's, as we've all touched on, not everything that's mentioned in the hadiths is necessarily going to be removed from the religion, But, just as you had, Bukhari and Muslim look through all these things and decide what is authentic and what is not, I think that if we're going to have Quran-only Islam, you'd have to have a companion volume that sifts through the surah and hadiths and other things and finds out once and for all what can be considered compatible with both the Quran, reality, and our modern understanding and conscience.
Okay. So then we are in the position that's so then we. Yeah. So then we are in the position of saying that the further removed we are from Muhammad and the Sahaba, the better we understand what the stuff actually means. Is basically what this position is.
The doctor's back. I'm not sure how much of that he heard, but we certainly owe him the ability to defend his position. So, doctor, you back? Sir?
Hello. Yeah, I am here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Okay, so, like I said, I don't know how much of that you heard.
I'm here, I did not hear a lot of things. Hello, you are there?
Yes, we're here.
Yeah, I have been, a lot of things I did not hear because there was some interruption here in my connection.
Okay.
But anyway, I'll tell you one thing, that Islam is simply the religion of Tawheed, which is the oneness of God.
Well, that's clever. I mean, that's That's fine to say, but what does that actually mean when you go to become a Muslim? Yes?
Go ahead.
Listen. If you do believe in God, if you do good works, if you do believe in the last day, then God says it's fine. You don't need to follow any. You can follow any deen. That's what the Quran says. So actually, we're not understanding the religion. What's the purpose of religion, and what is religion?
No, excuse me, sir. I mean that's what you've said the entire time. Let me. Did you hear my specific questions, or would you like me to repeat them to you?
No. I had to repeat. I did not hear.
Okay. So do you know how old the oldest Quranic manuscript that we have is? The actual oldest Quran that we have.
1400 years.
1400 years. Exact date. Do you have a date?
No, I don't remember the date, but there were 7 copies made, and they were distributed to 7.
Okay. The oldest one that we have, the actual physical one that we have, is 100 years after the Prophet's death. It's dated to about 710 AD. Okay? Prophet died 610. The oldest manuscript we have is 100 years later. Okay? That's number... I'm sorry? No. This is when it was collected. I'm actually talking about the oldest copy the oldest physical copy that we have is a manuscript from Yemen that is in Sana'a right now, and it's from...
Are you referring to the one in Istanbul and Tashkent? Which one is this?
No. I'm talking about the one in Yemen, the oldest living Quranic manuscript.
No, you need to distinguish between the Quran and
I am referring to the oldest living one in Istanbul and
I said manuscript more than once. And every single...
The oldest one is in Istanbul and Tashkent.
No.
The oldest one is in Yemen.
Dr. Syed, we are not talking about the complete Quran. We are talking about only the manuscripts.
For argument's sake, consider the oldest one is the one in Istanbul. How old is it? Your point will still get there, Ali.
Okay. Well, how old is the one in Istanbul? How many hundreds of years after the Prophet was that thing created?
No. It was during the time of Hazrat Usman.
This is a very simple question. It is literally just like a one-word answer. I mean, it's obviously 100 years after the Prophet. Is that correct?
No, not right.
But not right. How old then?
Hold on, let him come back, Ali.
Yeah.
I would say about 12 years after the death of the Prophet.
This is the oldest living piece of actual written manuscript.
Yeah.
Is that no? That is
Exactly.
factually incorrect. That is factually incorrect.
Okay. I still think that the point can be made.
Who collected the hadiths? Were they collected by human beings or were they collected by God and the Prophet?
The hadiths were collected by human beings.
No, not the hadith. The Quran. Who collected the Quran? Was it a human being or was it an angel or a god? Who collected the Quran? I believe
Quran
it
was written by human beings.
Okay. So how does this
By human beings.
Okay. So how is that any different than the hadiths being collected by human beings? And where does your argument come in that one is more valid than the other when both were collected by human beings?
The Quran. Okay.
Now, Ali, I understand you feel passionate about it. There's 4 of us and one of him, so let's be very cautious that this doesn't devolve into badgering. Okay? I understand you.
Hear me. That's all.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The Quran. Do I have a minute?
Yes, sir. You can come back as long as you wish.
Okay. The Quran was memorized even during the time of the Prophet. So so many people memorized it, and so it continued. And then there was a battle, and a lot of these people who memorized called Hufaz, they were killed. So that's why there was a compelling reason to write it down. But along with the written, the memorization continues even to today. Today there are millions of people who have memorized the Quran. I know of the only scripture in the world which people have memorized, and the title is called, singular is called Hafiz, the plural is called Hufaz. So that's why nobody can add or subtract anything.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. Go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Go ahead. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. Okay.
Doctor, did you have
All right.
Yeah. So that's why the people who introduce ideas like the Eve was created from Adam's rib and all that, they were injected into the hadith, not in the Quran. You know. So
I'm sorry. I just don't.
Quran,
why the Hufaz? I don't see why the Hufaz, who collected the Quran, are not the same, are not just as good at remembering hadiths. What is the argument that you're making that differentiates two texts that were collected by human beings, many of them the same human beings, and many years after the Prophet's death? I mean, Uthman's, the collector of the Quran, was 30, 40 years after him.
The difference is one individual will memorize the whole Quran and his title is Hafiz, and millions of people memorize the whole Quran, their title is Hufaz. Whereas hadith was not memorized, it was something you hear and tell, hearsay.
Okay,
That's
excuse me, but
no one.
So then how come we have? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No single person memorized the whole hadith. That's the problem, you see. That's why Bukhari has to spend about 30 years or so going one person to one person or another person, traveling different places to collect the hadith, because nobody, not a single individual, memorized the whole hadith. That's the problem. That's the difference.
Okay, so all right, so that's I get the point that you're making there. That just because it wasn't a single person, that's your argument. Then you're basically hinging it on the fact that it was one single person, and no single person can verify the hadiths. That's your argument. Okay, so you're okay. So then so basically, why then do you not take the hadiths that have been written down from the Hufaz themselves, the ones that they remembered, which is the Sahih?
No, the Hufaz never memorized the hadith.
Okay, so basically, right now, you what you're saying is that because the Hufaz, and again, keep in mind here that there are 7 different Qur'ans, okay? They were not collected during the Prophet's lifetime. There was differences among people who had the Quran, and that's why it was collected as well. I mean, that was one of the reasons, okay? And it doesn't matter to you as long as it says that it was one Hufaz that told them the Quran, because again, you don't know this. That's what they told you, which is obviously again your problem with the hadiths, okay?
No.
That's basically what your point is. Yeah.
No, the point is that when they wrote the Quran, the accent of the Arabs were different from the accent of the Persians, or the Indians, or the Yemenis. It was a problem. That's why they had to add these vowels into the Quranic words. And the first 7 original copies were sent out, and one of them was Yemen, and other 2 was Turkey.
We don't have video of the doctor, so I can't see body language. I don't know when he's pausing and when he's, there's possible technical problems.
I can't tell either.
Yeah. Sir, I'm sorry, I cut you off to explain why we were cutting you off. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah.
Did you have more?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Like I said, the video's not coming through, so when you stop, I don't know if it's a verbal pause.
Yeah, what I mean, today we have 2 original. No, you see, there's interruption here, a lot of interruption in this.
Yeah.
Only 2 originals are left today. One is in Istanbul, in that Topkapi Palace. Another is in Tashkent. And also, the problem is, if this is distorted, it could be caught by 2 ways. One, it goes against the memory of the Hufaz, because it contradicts what they have memorized. And secondly, God says in the Quran that if this is not from God, you will see a lot of errors into the Quran. So that's our purpose, is to find what are the errors, if there are errors.
But then you turn around and
we
say,
have found the errors.
okay, but then I turn around and tell you that in Surah 24, Surah An-Nur, he clearly says that man was not evolved and was created from a specific amount of thing, and you turn around and tell me that, you know, then we must understand it wrong. That you can't do. This is absolutely circular reasoning. You turn around and you say the Quran wouldn't be wrong, and in fact, when we show you that it was wrong, you say no. It doesn't mean what everybody else has been saying that it's meant. But
you have to go by,
I just want to go back to my original
point. For example,
point.
our knowledge.
Okay, can I just go back to the original point?
Hold on.
You
You've
see,
raised
the
something
Quran
else, so
says
it's
about
only
Big
right
Bang.
that you come back to that. So, what do you have to say to that, Dr. Syed?
What I'm telling is that there is a mention of the creation of the universe equivalent to Big Bang, and we did not know what Big Bang is. So now we understand what Big Bang is. Same thing about the about embryology. Human embryology is in the Quran. We did not know what it meant. So now we understand. So there are things like that. For example, the expansion of the universe. The expansion of the universe was discovered by the Hubble telescope now.
All right, and this is why I didn't want to get into this, by the way, because
I really wish the whole embryology thing. Do we really have to go into the?
Do we have a guy waiting on the expansion of the universe?
Can I just go back to the Qurans, just because this is, I mean, obviously he's got some factual mistakes here, because the oldest piece of the Quran is at least 100 years after the Prophet's death. I mean, that's the oldest living, that's the oldest living actual thing we have that was written about the Quran, you know, a section of the Quran. You cannot, I mean, this is...
What about the one in Istanbul, and what about the...
Yeah, Doctor, you're talking about full-length books, and and even that is being disputed.
Hello?
He's talking about the oldest fragments that have been confirmed. But I mean, that may be under dispute. I'm sure that afterwards we can look it up and
Right, are the oldest, the Istanbul and the Tashkent. Because I tell you, when Hazrat Usman was assassinated, his blood is there still on one of the pages in the Quran in Istanbul. You see?
Okay, but this is now going way off topic.
Sorry, I'm just taking. I just need to actually, because I was. I mean, honestly, almost 100% sure that there was no texts anywhere close to the Prophet's death.
Did you go to the Topkapi Palace? Did you go to Topkapi Palace in Istanbul and see the Quran, copy of the Quran?
Okay, never mind. I mean, just never mind all that. Let's just give you that. It was collected by Uthman. Okay, you still left exactly where you were. It was still collected by human beings. There are still differing versions of it, and you still have no way to find out why one is more credible than the other. Your argument is that one is collected by human beings, and basically the only argument that you make is the amount of time that had lapsed.
No. I see it. The content match with the Hufaz, the memories of the Hufaz.
But you don't know that, right? I mean, that was your argument about the hadiths. We don't know that that's what happened. Somebody has told you that the Hufaz told Uthman the Quran from one person's mouth. How do you know this?
Not that.
Somebody told you.
Hang on, Ali. Let him come back.
I think there are a lot of sources on this. They were collected and then written down, and then the accent was standardized.
Sir, some of the same sources that you are now referring to are the same sources that are cited for the hadiths. As a matter of fact, the same Hufaz are cited for the hadith as well. You're talking about sourcing stuff of sources that you've already said you would not accept for hadith, but you will accept.
Listen, tell me the name of the person who memorized the whole hadith.
I don't need
1400 years ago.
Okay, let me just make a fictitious person up. Ali ibn Abi Talib knew every single hadith that was ever said. How do you know that he didn't? Because somebody told you that somebody else knew the whole Quran, and you don't know that either. You're making an argument for the same thing.
No, listen. This, you know, what is masnad? Masnad is, sanad is.
Yes, I do know that. Yeah.
Okay, then that tells how it was collected, from who said to who.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna put. We seem to be going in circles. Basically, this is where a lot of religious debates break down when it comes to scriptures. Is that religious people, Christians, Muslims, and other religions, they claim that their religious text is right protected, and that's very difficult for people who don't take these supernatural claims.
No, for example, where is the? No, excuse me. Where is the Old Testament in Hebrew? Where is the New Testament in Greece? Is it anywhere in any museum today?
Well, they have very old texts. They have the Masoretic texts, and they have the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example.
No, I'm talking about the text of the Old Testament, the text of the New Testament in the original language. Are they preserved?
There is one credit card-sized specimen in Greek of John, I don't remember which one. Yes, they are. But what is the point of this?
Well, wait, hold on.
If it is there, then...
I'm sorry, Doctor, real quick. My point is the notion that a book can be perfectly preserved, whether by oral tradition or by written, is something that under normal circumstances is inconceivable. The only way we could think that that was so is if we believed that these sorts of gods and angels and so forth were real, but the only source we have of their existence are the very documents that are in question. So it creates a real impasse for us because, you know, you seem... would you be comfortable with the statement? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you believe that the Quran is protected against all alteration and corruption?
The only that is possible is the hufas. That's the only thing, because if they are not transmitting like that from generation to generation, it would have been distorted. You see, there is a continuous memorization for 1400 years, and it's still going on. There are schools where they memorize. There's still, even in the United States, there are at least 4 schools where the children learn this memorization, and they are there in all over the world, in all the countries. United States, I know there are at least 4 seminaries where they memorize this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but here's the thing. Right now they're memorizing what we refer to as the Cairo edition of the Quran. And the question is...
Not only that, listen, if we go to any country in the world, they recite the prayer, the salat, in Arabic.
Yes.
Whether you go to China, Russia, America, so there is no difference.
Right, but my point is that right now we live in an age of telecommunication and mass print, and you know we can easily and quickly check, you know, every letter in a digital version of the Cairo edition versus anyone else claiming that they have a Quran. But it seems inconceivable for us, barring the supernatural, and we don't take the supernatural for granted, that a written or verbal text could remain completely unchanged, because you know, people forget things. Even the the Hufaz, even they would have subtle different recitations, you know, when they're relating these words. And if you look, for example, you asked about Hebrew and Greek manuscripts. When they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found many books that were recognized as Old Testament books, but there were little changes here and there, various typos and mistakes and so forth. You know, those things creep in when you're using low-tech methods like you know, papyrus or the word of mouth and indoctrination. So, like I said, we'd have to already believe in God and angels to think that that could happen. But what I'm asking you right now is, do you maintain that in addition to your confidence in the skill, you know, of the Hufaz, do you think that the Quran is essentially divinely protected?
I'm just hold
on, let him come back to my question, then we'll come back to you.
Sure.
Doctor, are you with us?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
You see, that continuous transmission is what the protection is. Otherwise, there will be problems which will be noticeable, because there will be errors. The grammar, for example, we can catch many ways. The grammar, the context, so on and so forth, if there is an error. And also differences between one Hafiz, another Hafiz, from one country to another country. So it is easily, for example, recently somebody wrote the Furqan as a book of the Quran. And people immediately found out there are a lot of problems there, a lot of errors. Do you know that? The Furqan. Did you read that book, the Furqan?
The Furqan? On YouTube?
Its title is... Yeah,
No,
the
no,
Furqan.
he's- No.
It's a print.
That's
The
a,
Holy Furqan?
that
print.
joke.
I have read the Holy Furqan. I found it very enlightening.
I
there's a
think
book.
you're mishearing the word.
So like that, we can catch easily if
Okay.
there is a bogus...
I'm sorry, but can I just first off, going back
so
to that?
the meaning, the grammar, all that will be, we can catch it very easily. We can catch like a dollar bill. If it's a fraud, we can catch it.
Oh, well, can I just point out, we can do that now. We can do that now, but back in the day, just as you're saying, we can detect counterfeit bills because we have modern technology. Back in the day, catching a counterfeit denarius was a little bit tougher. You had to bite it and see how soft it was and see if it had the proper gold content. And by the same token, today, if you have a Hafiz in Morocco and another in Indonesia, they can get on Skype and we can compare them live. But back in the day when you had Morocco under the Murabids, and I don't know if this is contemporary, I don't know if my dates add up, but if you had Indonesian Muslims
Even
converted
then.
by Arab
Even
merchants,
then.
they could
Even-
not confer. It seems like at that point there's a great
That's
deal
all right.
of danger.
Let's take
of
there was a
detection and
distortion.
Yes?
That distortion could be found today. That will be evident today. Whatever they did mistakes, it will accumulate it, like a snowball, and will say definitely this is wrong.
Well,
see
it's
where
tough
that
when you.
evidence is.
Okay, we'll let Ali come back.
All right. The
We have
oldest.
analytical tools today to analyze those things.
Okay. The oldest, the one that you're speaking about, the one at the Topkapi Museum in Istanbul, is from, by Muslim estimates. I'm hearing an echo, by the way.
Mr. Ghost, we're getting some bleed from your microphone.
Echo.
Yep. Okay. From the Topkapi Museum in Istanbul, by that museum's estimates, is from the 1st or 2nd century after Hijrah. Okay, which puts it squarely between 750 and 900, which is the Western equivalent of the estimation on that.
Guys,
So obviously nowhere
guys,
near that point.
Hey, why
Because
are we
he seems
arguing
to
about a couple
place-
of days of the age of the Quran? What is the
Because
point
his
of
argument,
arguing
because
about
his
the
argument,
age?
because his entire argument rests on the fact that the Quran was not collected by human beings years after the Prophet's death, when in fact that's exactly how it was collected. Years
We're
after the
arguing
Prophet's
a
know
death.
couple
that
of years
the
plus
copy of
minus
the
here
Quran-
or there. We're talking about
No,
the
you have to
hadiths
know-
which are 250 years later. Can we stop arguing about the age of the Quranic manuscripts?
Well, no, because it's relevant to the conversation we're having.
I think the point still
No, it
stands.
is not. It's about the principle. It's not the age of the
But
manuscripts.
stop. I think the point still stands that according to the tradition, Uthman, when he made his definitive Quran, he burned all of the manuscripts that had been written that were deviates. And by the same token, when Bukhari compiled his, you asked about someone who memorized all the hadith, when Bukhari compiled his 600,000 hadiths and filtered out all, either way there was a filtering process.
Yes, but the thing is, whether we are now discussing whether the first manuscripts are from the year 630, 640, 680, 710 is irrelevant if we look at the distance between the hadiths and when the Quran was revealed. We're talking about centuries and not years or decades. So I don't understand how now discussing how old the first Quranic manuscript is relevant
Whether it is
to our
Quran or
discussion.
Hadith doesn't matter to me. Listen.
Okay, I think that I have probably run out my welcome, and I'm just gonna ask the last point that I wanted to make, which was if you are going to, go ahead and pick and choose whatever you want to say is right and whatever you want to say is wrong, you want to get, hello?
Hello. Hey, listen.
I'm actually gonna go.
No, listen. No, let's say if there is, let's see if there is a problem. Let's see what the problem is.
No. I'm just going to ask you one more point, because obviously we're not going to get to the point that I was trying to make on that, and so that's fine, obviously. So my last point is that people have understood Islam in a specific way. Every historical account that we have of Islam and its history completely confirms the fact that the Sahaba and the Prophet and all those guys completely believed in the hadiths and followed them vehemently. Is it then not fair to say that since you know the correct interpretation of the hadiths and the Quran better than the Sahaba and Muhammad, that we can just get rid of all of them and instead follow whatever book that you would like to write with the stuff that you think should be followed from the Quran and the hadith, and just call it a whole new Islam, a Syed madhab, for instance?
No, you cannot. No, you cannot make that statement at all. You see,
and why?
Because people, what the hadith was distributed in so many places, so many individuals, so many places. You see, it was distributed. So the best thing is to observe what the Prophet did, not what people wrote. For example, I prayed because I saw my elders praying. I did not read the hadith. Okay? When I went to Hajj, I saw what the other people are doing. How did they know? We had to go back. This is what is called practical tradition than theoretical tradition. You see, there are two types of traditions. One is practical, one is theoretical, written down. Okay? So nobody learns how to pray by reading the hadith. You just follow your elders. So like that. And now, when you become mature and analytical thinker, now you analyze what I'm doing is right or wrong. You see? And what is the benefit, if there's a benefit, So like that, you have to analyze. And when you analyze the Quran and the hadith, there's a problem. The problem is in the hadith. It contradicts the Quran, it contradicts rational thinking, it contradicts sciences. Then you have to reject these are the called.
Okay. So then is a fairer statement to make
Principles of the hadith. So this is already established, these principles of hadith,
Okay. So then is a fairer statement that you would just like to write Sahih al-Sa'id. Is that a fairer statement?
No. You see, first of all,
so in your worldview,
is this.
Let him come back, Ali.
That Islam in Islam, we have to believe in one God. That's called Tawheed. And if you are a scientist, you just analyze this statement and see if it's true or not. It's left to you. Whether you are a Muslim or a non-Muslim, doesn't matter. If you want to believe in one God, it's okay. Or if you don't want to believe in one God, that's fine. But it's left to you. It's your analytical thinking.
Okay. That's fair enough. All right. Thank you guys for giving me my time.
Yeah,
and
thanks a lot.
Good show. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Anyway, so I will agree with the caller wholeheartedly on one point, and that is, as I said, I think twice so far, if I was...
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, you can't hear?
Interruption.
Well, I'm going to try again. At any rate, if I was...
Now I can hear.
Okay, good. All right, if I was a member of your organization and I was confronted with this problem, but I had the same goal as you in order to reform the religion and work around the problematic hadiths and other literature that have these things that run contrary to what we can observe. I mean, this is like the Mutazilites, right? They used to say, well, we have to obey our set. You know,
I can't hear. I didn't hear you.
more sound problems. Can everyone in the chat is my sound breaking up for everyone, or is it just?
Oh, no, me.
No, it's fine. Get the next caller. Don't.
There is some interruption here.
Okay, I'll tell you what, Doctor, I don't know if you can hear me. I'm going to hang up on you and call you again, and hopefully it'll fix these sound hiccups that we're having, because yours is breaking up for us, and apparently mine's breaking up for you, okay?
No.
So I'm going to hang up and call you right back.
Agreed.
Okay, one more comment, please.
Yeah.
Like, you guys...
Money.
Like,
Money makes many things.
Like, with the Western world, like, they're successful, right? Like, America, Europe, and all that. And you guys don't give credit to Christianity, right? I mean, you guys just say, you know, that's just the way it happened. But when Islam, you know, when the Middle East is bad, you guys blame the religion, you know? I mean, like, in some cases you don't give credit to religion. In some cases, religion's to blame, you know? I mean,
well, I think the Industrial Revolution is responsible for the West's success.
Right, and that has nothing to do with religion. So, like, how can you blame the religion when that's something that's completely out of the realm of religion,
I don't know anyone here who's giving accolades to Christianity for the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, exactly, you guys aren't. You guys, I mean, like, you guys aren't saying, oh, they're successful because they're Christian, but at the same time, you guys are saying, oh, they're failure because they're Muslim. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like,
but the thing is, for a long time, the West was a failure due to the influence of Christianity. It was when the Pope got demoted from a pan-national leader who ruled with an iron fist, when he got demoted to basically being just another Italian prince. It was during that era that learning and other things really took off, and there was more an expansion of ideas. Different things could be discussed without someone being tortured and killed for being a heretic. You know, for the longest time, the church persecuted anyone amongst the laity who tried to read, forbid any copies of you know, the Bible being translated into language that the average people could read. So I would say that we actually are consistent in that right now the form of Islam that's being practiced in the Muslim world today is very similar in many features to what was practiced in you know, the Dark Age Europe, except of course now Islam is a loose confederation, whereas the Catholic Church was a central body. But beyond that, I think that it is very similar in that the conservatives within Islam, they're persecuting anyone who comes up with a religion that comes up with any ideology or ideas that are foreign to, like the thing about what the doctor was saying earlier about microphones originally being considered haram. Anything that comes from outside of the sphere of the religious tradition, whether it be a new idea about Islam, like what Dr. Syed is proposing, or whether it be anything that we talk about, any new invention, technology, social model, economic model, they all have to pass this hurdle of the religion. Just like the Greek knowledge died out because it was pagan and you know, anathema to the Christians. There are a lot of similarities there. There are absolutely a lot of similarities. And like I said, I don't think anyone here is going to give accolades to Christianity. I mean, you know, after the Industrial Revolution, in terms of many of the West's successes, its Christianity was incidental. So I would say that our position is really quite consistent. Maybe you don't see it that way.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's stop.
I have somebody who would like to add something.
Is it Rationalizer?
How did you guess?
Yes, okay. I'm going to add the Rationalizer call. Apparently Max and the Rationalizer had a previous discussion, and they said that they wanted to resolve this on the show. So let's give a big hand for the Rationalizer. Welcome back. It's good to see you again.
Hiya, can you all hear me okay?
Yes, welcome.
Good. Excellent. Max is here. I believe he's going to debunk everything I've ever said in my life.
oh, I never said that. I never said
I know,
that.
I know, but I do like to exaggerate for the sake of amusing myself.
You just made me spill a full mouth of beer.
Right. I don't know what Max wants to. He apparently. Well, actually, Max, you explain, and then I won't be putting words in your mouth.
Oh, like I just want to thank you guys because like when I watch your guys' videos, I think anyone with an open mind, they should be challenged, you know. And I was challenged, I had doubt, but then I was able to clear my doubts, and like I was able to be, you know, more, you know, I was be more confident in my religion. So like I just thank you guys, you know, like in my mind, I've been able to find things that support my position, opposed, you know what I'm saying? Like I've been able to clear those doubts. So that's it, you know. Like I mean, it would be too long to discuss all those things that I use to clear those doubts that you guys put in my videos, but I just want that's all I want to say.
Well, thank you, and we appreciate that. And of course, we appreciate we really rarely get Muslim callers these days. Today we hit a bonanza, and we have a famous one and then a regular one. But anyway, what was the issue under contention between Max and Rash?
Oh,
well, if I remember the message correctly, I believe that Max was going to call in and prove to me that the Quran says that the universe is expanding.
Oh, I think you're mixed. I sent you a message and I said, "What do you think about these 4 videos?" And then you sent me a message back saying, "Hey, I'll talk to you on the show." And I was like, "What? I don't like that's. I don't. I think you're mixing me up."
No, you're clause 234, aren't you?
Yeah.
Let me check.
Okay, bye-bye, both of you.
Everyone, you guys talk amongst yourselves for a minute while I have a look.
Max, it was something revolving. Something involving the expanding universe claim that people say is found in the Quran.
Well, I don't know Arabic, so I can't. I mean, I can't say. I'm not just what translations say. You know.
Right. Now, I'm operating the show right now. I can't really,
yeah.
tab out and do a lot of things. But I do remember investigating this exact claim in this exact verse, and I recall that the Arabic term didn't mean what they were saying it meant. At
Are you
least there
talking
were
about
no
the
other usages
Musiyun?
of the word used there that
The
meant
Musiyun?
it was continuing to expand. Like I said, if I was a caller and not the host, I'd rummage around and find the exact word, but it's kind of inconvenient for me. For example, I didn't even see your contact request. At first, I thought you were jerking me around. I owe an apology to Max, because at first I was like, Max, you keep, he was saying, let me on. I was saying, well, send a contact request. I just didn't notice it because I was so busy. So at first I just thought you were trolling me.
Oh, right, okay. No, no, I don't... Maybe it was someone else that wrote to me saying that they can prove the expanding universe, but but we do have a subject. We do have. Look, I'm not infallible. The scripture written into my head has been modified since it went in. One of the things that that Max has challenged me to do is do a rebuttal of the claim of the Quran using the correct title of king. Despite the Bible using Pharaoh at the time of Joseph. I'll let Max explain it to make it fair, but my understanding of this is that the Bible calls people pharaohs, but apparently we don't believe that people were called pharaohs back then. They were kings, but the Quran calls them king and doesn't mention Pharaoh until later. That's my understanding of this claim, but if I'm wrong, then Max can clear it up.
No, well, we had this 2 weeks ago. We had sciences in the Quran a couple of weeks ago where there was ample time to discuss all these points, but we're not. I don't think we should go now into topics like this.
Well, at least let Max come back on now that the question's been raised.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, I heard the Bible uses both, like Pharaoh and King, interchangeably. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right, okay. It's very easy. The word Pharaoh only applies to the Pharaoh that apparently drowned while chasing the Israelites. It never says the Pharaoh. It always just says Pharaoh, as if it's an identity rather than a role. So any other time, the word king is used, but by the time Muhammad come along, the Pharaoh of the Old Testament was so infamous that they were obviously just calling him Pharaoh. It's not as if the Quran goes through history calling people king and then get to that point and then switch over to Pharaoh for everyone else. Every time the word Pharaoh is used, it is literally the very same person, and because it doesn't say Al-Firun, the Pharaoh, it's obviously not talking about a role, it's talking about an individual person who they called Pharaoh.
Alright, thank you. I'll look into that, Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, But just have a quick scan through the Quran, look for Pharaoh. You will not once see the Pharaoh. It's always just Pharaoh.
It will be interesting to mention that there are totally no historic evidence that Jews have ever been into Egypt and came out. So it was just copied over from the Hebrew Bible, as simple as that.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, the ironic thing is if the Hebrew scriptures were accurate, then all of these horrible murders would have completely, you know, undermined their position. But because their history is false, they have much cleaner consciences than they think. You know, I mean, I was actually talking to someone on Skype not too long ago who was a former, I think he said he's a former Salafi, and you know, he was taught that you know, such and such about you know, they were taught about some things, literal stories about the Hebrew traditions and various things. And I said, well, you know, the modern evidence, as far as we can tell, is that basically as humanity comes out of Africa, they start branching in different directions, and that the Hebrews were just one branch of the Semite family of peoples, and they developed a different phonology over time and so forth. But they're just Semites like any other. Oh no, we lost Dr. Syed again. Oh well. Max or Rationalizer, did either of you have more?
Oh, I'm good.
Not really. I mean, if I'm not here to raise a point. I'm just here. Max said that he's watched all of my videos and he's got a counter to everything I say. So
Yeah, I never said
I just wanted to say again. Sorry.
Like, I meant like I didn't mean I was gonna put them all in this video. You know, like I meant like for me. You know, like doing my own research. I mean, I didn't mean like.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna let you both go. Rash,
thank you.
Rash, it was good to see you again. And Max, feel free to call back again on any of the future shows. It's uncommon for us to get a counterpoint from actual Muslims, so we appreciate it. And we realize that it takes a great deal of courage to come on a show where, you know, the entire panel is of the opposing opinion. So we appreciate it a lot. Take care. Salam.
I just want to say that it's not.
Bye, Rash.
That's too quick, eh?
Okay, now we're going to bring in Kaiser Schlachten, who has, I forgot what his comment was. I think I'm running out of steam in the last lap. Professor, you're back with us? How are you doing? Did you have any comment on what they were talking about? I thought I would kind of leave you out of it, because between Ollie Ollie and the other stuff we're talking about, you've been a real trooper so far, so I don't know if you need a rest or something. Did you have anything to say on what our other two guests were talking about? Sir?
Hello, can you hear me?
Well, yes, Kaiser's here, so we'll just let him talk.
Alright. Is the other person here? The doctor?
He's gone a bit quiet. Dr. Syed, are you with us?
No, I'm not Dr. Syed.
Well, yeah, anyway, what was your question? If you'll either hear it or we'll
Confusion reigns.
Alright. My question was, you know, just like communism was had a lot of ideals, in reality it didn't live up to what it was espouting. In the same way, Islamic countries generally are, you know, much worse than all the non-Islamic countries around them. Pakistan versus India, you know, it's just all the borders of Islamic countries versus non-Islamic countries. You can see this. So that's just my point.
Now, I don't know if the professor is either AFK or having some other problem. It shows him as being part of the call, but I guess it's up to us to address it. Unless, Professor, are you back? I keep calling him Professor. Is he actually Professor? Well, he teaches, so yeah. Right? Am I right about that?
Yes, he teaches.
Okay, so I'm not erroneously calling him Professor. Okay, well, he's not responding. I don't know what the problem is, so we'll just have to address that between ourselves. Stop or Atheist Ghost, do you have anything to say on this?
Totally true.
Well, I mean, but I think that anyone has to come to the conclusion that the Muslim world is in a state of disrepair. But the question is, I guess what you're asking, Kaiser, is why doesn't it ameliorate all of these problems? The fact that they're practicing the one true faith.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why we should be practicing an ideology or following something is what we see on the ground practically. not
Actually, exactly. If it's not usable and it's not doable, and there is no point of implementing such a law, that was one of the reasons that convinced me that I live in a country where at least they say they implement the Islamic Sharia, and they say Islamic Sharia protect women, but I actually have seen them abused because of Islamic Sharia. I haven't mentioned that before, but I know a lot of ladies, for example, that have been abused by their fathers, their brothers, because Islamic Sharia required that the guardian approve every single step she makes. So at the end of the day, they abuse her for money. They abuse her on her salary. They abuse her for giving her a permission to study abroad. They abuse her to buy a home. So if a system can be misused, that literally shows it's not divine. You cannot say we assume that they will behave in such a way, because if you do assume, then that's not a good system.
It's not really assuming by this point, right? We've seen, a couple centuries of Islamic rule, right?
Yeah, but this is why we have today exactly this discussion, and this is why Dr. Syed is saying we need to have a reform. We need to have a renaissance of Islam. We need to go into the 21st century because Muslims today are not fit for today's society.
I was going to leave this to the end of discussion to say, but the methods that Professor Syed is trying to suggest will end up alienating him into a very minority subset that I am sure the next day most of Muslims will call them apostates. Ismailis did a little bit of what he was suggesting, and they are considered for example, Wahhabis and Salafis, who are called them non-Muslims. There are sects that started just with the same movement that Professor Syed was trying to make. If you read about the history, for example, of Qadianis or in India, or Baha'is in Iran, they started with something like that. We're going to do some bit reform. Of course, they added that they are the Mahdis or whatever. And again, if you read, there are a lot of people who were even more strict Quranis than the path Professor Syed is trying to suggest. And all Muslim would call them, they are not Muslims. As simple as that. So I don't think even his calls are going to have a widespread followers or any kind of that.
I agree with you, but this is why I think Kaiserschlachten is actually asking this question. How do you make the Islam of the 7th century, how do you modernize it? How do you make it fit into today's world? You can't.
The only possible way that I've seen it working actually is to keep Muslims ignorant of their hardcore part of the religion. If you look on the streets...
That's the problem.
If you see a moderate Muslim from Tunisia or Egypt, where they literally know very little about religion, that's a moderate Muslim. That's why I have a saying,
exactly.
A moderate Muslim is a Muslim who's ignorant of his religion. As simple as that.
Exactly. This is why I asked Dr. Syed, what is the path? What is the way of going forward? How do you implement this? This is the whole problem. I absolutely agree with you.
Okay, the doctor's back. His connection had further problems. I'm sorry about the technical problems. I don't know what it is. There's nothing we can really do about it. It seems like the connection where you are seems to be the root of our evils. But we carried on as best as we could without you. Let me quickly encapsulate what we were talking about for you. First of all, can you hear me? Dr. Syed?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, the question...
I can hear you.
Okay, great. The question that our new caller raised was, why... How are these... If Islam is the true faith, how are these problems able... actually, go ahead and quickly reiterate your question in your own words, Kaiser.
Sure. If Islam is a practical religion, which is supposed to make people better, why doesn't that show up on the ground?
What do you mean?
What
is not showing on the ground?
Look at,
what is the problem?
Sure, look at a place like Nigeria, right? The northern part. The people are generally poor. The people are generally less educated. The people are generally more stubborn. If you look at the European countries versus Middle Eastern countries, and generally, people from Islamic countries generally tend to be very arrogant, resistant to change, don't like new ideas. So why should we change ourselves to become like Islamic countries?
The first answer is that people are ignorant. They don't have good education. First of all, illiteracy, as I told, every time I tell that 65% of the Muslims are illiterate, are ignorant. So they follow whatever their elders tell them.
But
Plus the rulers are deliberately keeping their subjects ignorant, illiterate, so that they can rule forever. That's the truth in Middle East also. All the Muslim countries where a person is ruling, wants to rule for maybe 40, 50 years, then after he died, then he wants to keep his son there, just like the royal system. The king and the sons, they rule. So this is the problem. That's the main problem.
Okay, but we
so
can
if you don't know,
we can say in societies where there were no central government, like Somalia and Afghanistan, we see hardline Islam rise to the top.
That's true. That's true, because it's so controllable. The public are so weak, they are so illiterate, and there is no guidance. The ruler is supposed to be a leader to guide the subjects to advance them. That's the primary the goal of the ruler. If the ruler just want to be staying there and be corrupt, make money, and that he finds that is pleasurable, and why should he worry about the subjects? Why should he educate them? Why should he treat them?
The point I'm trying to make...
He wants to be good to America. America gives them $3 billion. Okay.
So
man,
the
enjoy.
The point I was trying to make is that even when there is no central controlling government or a dictatorship, we always find the hardline Islam rising to the top. Even in Somalia and Afghanistan, it always ended up being hardcore Islamist.
It is the militia. It is the militia. It is the militia that is in the power.
Why not
whoever has the power will rise.
Can I stop here? I guess the question is, how did things get this bad? How did it decline? I mean, starting from, let's take the height of the Golden Age, where you have the Mutazilites and the caliphs were great patrons of learning. How did it, in a nutshell, how did it get this bad? How did it decline?
Because the Asharites, one were the Mutazilites. You see, the Asharites were not rationalistics. So the rationalists were the Mutazilites, and the Mutazilites were supported during the Golden Age, by people like Harun al-Rashid and his predecessor and his followers. And so we had that Baitul Hikmah, things like that. And so a lot of debates were going on. A lot of books were written. The amount of reward was that the weight of the book was given in gold. So the scholars wrote in volumes, 20 volumes, 25, because they weighed so much. So there was a reward for knowledge, and knowledge was encouraged. And for that reason, the people from Europe went there to learn science, mathematics, medicine, all those things. So that type of the drive to acquire knowledge, to advance, is not there, because people who are ruling are corrupt, and they want to hold on to the chair there, the power chair. So they don't care for the advancement of because the advancement of the subjects is a danger to the ruler. Their stability will be gone, because people will revolt, they demand. So this is the easy way to keep them illiterate, keep them under control. It's very simple. It has nothing to do with Islam at all. Anybody with any religion will do the same thing. It's human nature. Just don't believe Islam.
I would comment in Professor Syed and say, even though I'm an Arabian and I'm very proud of my heritage, but I would say Muslims and Arabs, just like anybody else, They form an empire, they had their golden age, and it's gone. I mean, Mongols had the same thing, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the French, the British. I don't see Islam being the source for them to rise to the top or even to fall to the ground. Actually, it might be one of the reasons that they fell very hard, because it was Islam, just like as Christianity in the Middle Age, was a very good tool to control the masses. But having the golden age, I mean, if Islam, as we know today, was available to those Muslims back then, I'm sure they haven't even reached the golden age. Look at the current day. Whatever is called as a golden age, the scientists that are named counted on the fingers as the great Muslim scientists, all of them one by one are considered apostates by standards of Islam today.
Kaiser, did you have any more before we let you go?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Mr. Syed, you're saying that if people were just smarter, they and understood the Quran better, they would be better. They would act better. But if you read the Quran itself, it's not like it's a really nice document. You know, it has a lot of parts in it that encourage people to fight people who aren't Muslims until they become Muslims, for example.
No, that's all wrong interpretation. You know, you have to be fair. Just don't do that.
Let him come back.
Be fair.
But sure.
Go ahead, doctor.
Yeah, you have to be fair. You know, you read from somewhere, and you just quote that thing. You know, there are things like kill these infidels wherever you find them. This is out of context. You know, this has been going over maybe 1,000 years. It's ridiculous to bring it today. You have to be very, very fair. Don't be prejudiced. Don't bring things like that.
Okay, Mr. Syed. If the matter is the education, I will give you 3 examples. Sayyid Qutb, the one who, the creator of the Salafi movement in Egypt, had his education in the USA. Bin Laden, I don't need to introduce him, of course, had his education in Switzerland. Houaini, one of the magnates of Salafis in Egypt now, had a scholarship in Spain. So those people are highly educated. They even lived in the West, and even though this did not change their mind, and actually, it just made them hardcore Salafis. So it's not about education or how smart they are. They are smart. All of them are engineers or doctors.
Yeah, but hang on. If I understand Dr. Syed correctly, what Dr. Syed is saying is, it is not a matter of education. It is a matter of applying critical thinking.
And who would do that better than educated people?
Well, real quick, before you come back to that, Doctor, you said that in terms of verses like slay the infidels wherever you find them, there's context that adequately explains it. Do you want to go into that just a little bit? Because this is a verse that people come up with quite frequently. So what is the context that makes this?
You have to read the whole verse. You know, you are just taking out of context. You see, I tell you, somebody comes to my house and kicks me out. What should I do? Should I kiss the neck of this pharaoh, or should I defend myself? You tell me. What is the context? The context is somebody kicking me from my own house. What is the thing I have to do now? You tell me.
Well, are you
get out of the house?
Can I pick this one?
Or should I fight back?
How do you apply to that verse, though? I mean, what exactly is the verse trying to tell us?
You make my life miserable to live. What can I do? Be a slave or be brave and fight back?
I'm sorry, this is not the context of the verse.
That's the context. That's the context. You read.
But it's 9:5.
If you are driven out from your homes, it says. If you read that thing, tell me the whole thing.
Okay, sir. It's verse 9:5. And it literally, and this is in Nasikh and Mansukh. I'm sure the one that you're referring to is Mansukh. Mansukh means it's been, there is a newer verse which contradicts the older one. So by Islamic Sharia law, you should follow the new one. And the new one is very clear, and it says, after the holy months are done, kill the infidels wherever you found them. Period. It doesn't say make peace with them. It doesn't say if they attack you. It's verse 9-10. Anybody can search it. It literally says, kill them all. Kill the infidels wherever you find them.
Is there nothing before and after? After what does it say afterwards? You have to read the whole thing.
If you're looking
What's
right
the
at
context?
it, yeah, if you're looking right at it, just go ahead and read it as is. The whole surrounding. Do you have it right in front of you, Atheist Ghost?
Yes, yes,
So this
yes. Well, the
It's
one,
unfair. It's
the
unfair.
verse after it, that says, and if any of the polytheists seek your protection, then grant him protection, so that he may hear the words of Allah, then deliver to him his place to safety. This is because they are people who don't know. Okay, and the verse before it says, expect are those whom you are made to treaty among them polytheists, and then have not defeated toward you in anything or suppose anything against you. So it literally, the verse before it says, if you had an agreement with them, don't attack them. But the second one says, but after it's done, kill them wherever you find them. I mean, this is the last verse mentioned regarding holy warfare in Islam. So this supersede anything that was mentioned before it. Now, if you want to have your own tafsir,
very
why my
clearly
guess?
the context, the tafsir and all, whatever. I don't agree with what you are interpreting. That's not right, because I have read differently, but I don't have the resource with me.
That's
in my hands.
not my interpretation,
But,
sir.
we can argue
that's
that later.
what's written. That's not my interpretation. That's the text of Quran itself.
No,
Did you read?
Hang on, guys.
What is that?
There's
Just
a
a
second part. There's a second part in this which says, but if they repent, and this is what you normally hear. So there's two different versions of looking at this.
Right. Well,
What
the
is
thing is,
what is the repent part?
the
There's
thing
no
is,
repent.
the way it was interpreted by the first generation of Muslims, like the people who marched under the banner of Umar, you know, they looked at these verses and they said, okay, we go up to a city, we say, okay, your options are threefold. You can convert to Islam, you can surrender and become a protected peoples and pay a protection fee, or you can all die. And I think that is perfectly in keeping with what we're seeing here. It's like, okay, kill them unless they. I mean, one thing needs to be clear. The verse is not saying exterminate everyone. It's not saying that. It's saying they can either fight and die, or they can surrender and then pay us the poor rate. So you know, it's not that much better, but it's better than being annihilated, I guess. It's better. It's a better deal than the Hebrews gave to the Canaanites, you know, where
Exactly.
they had to kill every last infant and animal. Although we've already established that those stories are probably completely fictitious.
It's an evolution of religion.
Yeah, yeah, really.
But Mr. Syed, but how?
He's-
how
he's-
Let me read it to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me read it to you. This just a second.
Okay.
This is from Muhammad Asad. The translation is, and so when the sacred months are over, slay those who ascribe divinity to art beside God, wherever you may come upon them, and take them captive and besiege them, and lie in wait for them at every conceivable place. Yet if they repent and take to prayer and render the purifying dues, let them go their way. For behold, God is much forgiving, a dispenser of grace. So then you have to read this. Now it says, the tafsir says, as I have pointed out, no more than one occasion, every verse of the Quran must be read and interpreted against the background of the Quran as a whole. The above verse, which speaks of a possible conversion to Islam on the part of those who ascribe divinity to art beside God, with whom the believers are at war, must therefore be considered in conjunction with several fundamental Quranic ordinances. One of them, there shall be no coercion in matters of faith. That is La Ikrah fi Din, Surah 2, 256. Lays down categorically that any attempt at a forcible conversion of unbelievers is prohibited, which precludes the possibility of the Muslims demanding or expecting that a defeated enemy would embrace Islam as the price of immunity. Secondly, the Quran ordains fight in God's cause against those who wage war against you. But
Oh, I'm sorry.
do
I'm sorry.
not
I'm sorry.
commit
Sorry.
aggression.
Sorry.
For
I'm
verily
sorry.
God does not love aggression.
No. I'm sorry,
So
sir.
I can go on like that, you know.
All right, Atheist Ghost, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, all. I'm sure you wanna come up with your own sect, but all Muslim scholars agree that the verse that you just used a couple of words when fight those who fight you came before that. So this is the last verse that was revealed regarding holy war. So this is the one to follow. I mean, you have to, one of the things that you have to keep in mind as well is the historical context of where those verses were revealed. This verse came last. So this one should be implemented, not the one that you just mentioned, which says, fight those who fight you. This one does not even use, in Arabic, it doesn't use a defensive terms, just like the one you just mentioned, fight those who fight you. This one use an aggressive, قاتلوهم, فاقتلوهم, and fight them. The other one that you just mentioned now is a defensive. That was when the Prophet did not, I mean, I don't want to go into a more complicated issue. But this one supersedes that the one you just mentioned. So you cannot use the verse that you just quoted now to explain that one, because this one superseded.
Isn't the first verse though still compatible with a stance of expansionism? Because to fight against you could mean fighting against you if they're defending themselves. You understand? In other words, if I launch an attack on someone and they don't surrender, but instead, take to their walls with their archers, I could still say that they're fighting against me. You know?
In the context that you can understand, if you read it in Arabic, it literally means fight those who are fighting you. It's not like you began the fight. They are literally fighting.
What about
and at that time, the Prophet Muhammad was literally in war with Mecca and Quraysh tribe. So it was very clear who are those who are fighting you. But this one, it's called the mushrikeen, the polytheists, or the infidels. So it's generic, as opposite to those who are fighting you. It's like fight any polytheist.
What about the?
And just to prove my point, just look what happened later on. I mean, when Muslims try to get into that, I tell them, okay, so you fought with the Romans because they harassed you. You fought with the Persians because, okay, what did the Egyptian do to you to invade them?
Yeah, that is a problem for the early. I mean, I can certainly understand why Muslims don't want to distance themselves from a lot of the regimes that exist today. But even the empire that is so glorified as being the nadir of power and sophistication of the Muslim population and of Arabs, it's a hard sell to say that people from Iberia to Bactria all formed an existential threat to people in the Hijaz. But Doctor, I think we're going to let Kaiser go in a minute. Doctor, did you have anything?
Kaiser still had a point.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I mean, in the same surah, there's another ayah. It says, fight those who do not believe in Allah or the last day, and who do not prohibit what Allah and His Prophet made legal, and who do not believe in the true religion from those from the people of the book until they give you jizya and they are in the lowly state. I mean, it doesn't matter how how smart you have to be, how educated, how scholarly. It's hard to argue with the jihadis when they take this ayah in to mean just fight the non-Muslims until they submit to you. This is in Surah At-Tawbah, verse 29.
Just while Professor Syed is looking for the verse, I have to comment.
Stop had a comment first, and he's been quiet for a while.
Okay.
All right, thank you guys for allowing me.
Thanks a lot. And call back anytime. Cheers.
Sure.
Stop, you had a comment?
No, I said that Kaiser had a point.
Oh, okay, sorry. Then go ahead, Atheist Ghost, sorry.
Okay, so I was trying to say, I mean, if every school of Muslims will come with their own tafsir of the Quran, what is the point of the book of being holy? I mean, can't God be clear with us?
Actually, I think...
No, just a second. That word holy doesn't exist in the Quran.
Yeah.
The Quran has 55 names, and none of them says Quddus, means holy. It is a Bible which says Holy Bible. So the Muslims copied that word Holy Bible to Holy Quran. It's a book of guidance, not holy.
Okay, so the book of guidance revealed by God, why do we need a lot of people to explain it and everybody got his own interpretation? I studied
Yeah, the
engineering.
Quran is not.
Sir, I studied engineering. And the first,
Let him come back, atheist ghost. Sorry, go ahead, doctor.
The Quran has to be interpreted depending on the context, the place, and the time. You see, for example, it says in one of the verses that when the women go out, they should identify themselves wearing a shawl, outer garment, so that they won't be molested. Okay, so that condition is not there nowadays. So that was a context when they had to have something, and you had to know what the context was, why they were asked to have some type of outer garment to identify it as believing woman from non-believing woman. You see?
Well, but I think
so that doesn't apply now.
I think that atheist ghost. I think that atheist ghost was saying that it's a peculiar weakness of a book written by either a god or transmitted to a prophet who's supposed to be able to see into the future. The real author of the Quran really is supposed to be Allah himself, right? And he's just transmitting it through the angel to Muhammad. And it's just a peculiar weakness of a being that has so much foresight that he doesn't predict all of the different misunderstandings that could arise out of lack of context.
You have to know the Asbabun Nuzul, which means Shani Nuzul, which means the causes of revelation. So it was revealed for 23 years, and in the context of whatever was happening in those days.
Yeah.
So there was an answer needed, how to solve the problems at that time.
Yeah.
So those verses were relevant at that time and at that place.
Yeah, I perfectly see your point, Doctor, but the problem we run into now is so much has happened, and both we for our reasons and you for your own reasons, the other texts, the tafsir and the hadiths and the surah and the histories, these have all been called into doubt because they're not perfect, but often they're the only trail of crumbs that we have leading back to the doorstep of the Quran and the descriptions of the culture and the politics of the time. So, it's a little bit peculiar that you can't read the Quran right out of the box, and that the last surah revealed was like a glossary of terms, which is
you have to read this book. The reading. Can you excuse me?
Yes.
Can I inject this here? Can you please go and read this book, Reading the Quran by Dr. Ziauddin Sardar? I want everybody to read that book.
What is it called?
Reading the Quran. Reading the Quran, Quran, Quran by Dr. Ziauddin Sardar. He is in London, UK. He lives there.
Okay.
And he is also publisher of Critical Muslim. Huh?
Okay.
He publishes a quarterly magazine called The Critical Muslim.
Dr.
His
Syed,
name
is it
Dr.
possible for you to
Ziauddin.
type the name?
Well, it's recorded. I'm sure that. Oh yeah, if you can record it or spell it for us.
I can spell it for you.
Okay.
His first name is Ziauddin. Z as in zebra, I as India, U, Z-I-A. A as in apple, U as in umbrella, D as in David, D as in David, I as in umbrella, N as in Nancy. Ziauddin. Z-I-A-U-D-D-I-N. Ziauddin. Last name is Sardar. S as in Sam, A as in apple, R as in Robert, A as in apple, R as in Robert. Sardar. D-A-R. S-A-R-D-A-R. Sardar. Last name is Sardar. S-A-R-D-A-R.
You got it. Okay.
So,
read the Quran
just,
by Ziauddin Sardar. I will look into
Okay.
that.
I will just mention another thing that there isn't a lot of
Put in
contradicting.
Google.
I'll just mention another case where there is a lot of contradicting verses that we can say which one to follow or which one complement one. A very simple topic: slavery in Islam. I mean, the Quran gave laws and rights to slaves, which was better than the Bible. But at the end of the day, he did not prohibit slavery. And now, human did that before and after Islam. But we still, until now in Sharia, it's been taught in schools the laws of slavery in Islam. How come God did not prohibit slavery, or at least say after 10th century from now it should be prohibited?
Okay, if you want to respond to that, you can. I'm going to bring in our final guest, Klingschor, who has been patiently waiting.
Guest?
Yeah, our new guest. Welcome to the show. Boy, you slept in really late today.
Haha.
What's your question today?
First of all, I'd just like to say to Syed, Ibrahim, there we go. I appreciate the fact that you are a progressive Muslim or a moderate Muslim. I think that's fantastic. We definitely need more people like you in the world. But some of the things that you have stated as fact, I contest. And so it is in the realm of fact claims that I have come. And I have come not with the scalpel approach, but rather with a flamethrower. You said that the Hafiz recorded the Quran. Well, let's have a look at that. First of all, who collected the Quran? Ibn Sa'd records that it was Umar, but he also records that it was Uthman. Al-Bukhari records that it was Abu Bakr, but then he also records that it was Uthman. So Muslim sources cannot agree. And then of course we have these different records of Al-Hajjaj actually recording it. Also, the Quran is never really mentioned by Muslims as a source of law, or even really mentioned until the early 8th century. And for example, the Fiqh Akbar 1 is a document dated to the middle of the 8th century, which is basically, and I quote here, a kind of statement of the Muslim creed in face of sects. Thus, the Fiqh Akbar 1 represents the views of orthodoxy on the then predominant dogmatic questions, and yet the Quran is not mentioned once in that document. In fact, according to a late Umayyad polemic between a Christian and a Muslim, the Christian says to the Muslim in response to criticism, "Not all your laws and commandments are in the Quran which Muhammad taught you. Rather, there are some which he taught you from the Quran, and some are in Surah Al-Baqarah, and in the Injil and in the Torah." So according to this source, which is actually earlier than any Muslim source, remember, the Sirah and the Hadiths were written during the mid to late 8th and 9th centuries, all the Hadiths being written to the mid to late 9th century. So this earlier source indicates that Surah Al-Baqarah was actually a completely different document. Also, let's see, what is it? Sulaiman ibn Mujahid established during the Abbasid era that there were 7 different ways to read the Quran. So the Hafiz, memorizers, certainly didn't preserve the Quran properly because he had 7 different ways of reading it, 7 different interpretations. But then his students further on went on to record his 7 different ways, 14 different ways. So we have 14 different ways. And then recently at Sana they discovered all these thousands upon thousands of Quranic manuscripts, and Gerd Puin, a German scholar studying them, has discovered at least 5,000 textual deviants within the razm, so within the consonantal text of these alternate Qur'ans. So I think it's completely false to say that the Qur'an has been perfectly preserved in any way. Also, just to put it out there, the Mu'tazila theology was implemented by force by the Mihna Inquisition. Also, Atheist Ghost, Almighty Atheismo, Christianity did not cause the Dark Ages. It had almost nothing to do with it.
Yes, it did.
No, it didn't.
You're wrong.
No, it did not.
You're wrong.
No, it was the collapse of the Roman Empire that caused the end of caused the beginning of the Dark Ages.
If the collapse was allegedly the loss of the Grecian knowledge, then the Grecian knowledge would have all disappeared.
Grecian knowledge had nothing to do with it.
Timing with the collapse of the respective empires. You're just wrong.
No. The empire collapsed first. Do you know who preserved the Grecian knowledge? The monks. Christians, the church preserved Grecian knowledge in many respects, in many instances.
No, they hoarded.
The Carolingian Renaissance. The Carolingian Renaissance. They were writing down and preserving Greek texts and Greek philosophy.
No, wrong again. The Carolingian Renaissance was because the German kings with the Holy Roman Empire grew in respective power to the Pope. At the time, the Pope was just a client of the Germanic kings. And it was his weakening and his inability to dictate terms to the Germanic kings that led to the Carolingian Renaissance. So you're just flat wrong.
No. The Pope Pope only gained his power later on. I've just been studying this for the whole last semester, mate. I've got a textbook.
You studied it wrong. Anyway.
No, I'm sorry. The view you're espousing, right, is rhetoric that is commonly
not
profited
rhetoric,
by...
fact.
No, freaking Richard Carrier. Richard Carrier testifies that Christianity...
I don't know who that is, so I don't care.
Then you should. He's a very prominent anti-theist whose specialty is science in the ancient world, and he writes on it. And he's done a thesis on it. eh? Christianity didn't help slow it. It may have sped it up. It may have. It certainly didn't stop it, but it did not cause the end of science in Europe. It was not Christianity. I mean, the church didn't. I mean, it's like Islam. It probably didn't play much of a role either way, nor promoting nor getting rid of it. It was more due to the fact that people couldn't travel anymore because everywhere there were roving bands of barbarians. So the central government.
Wait, the barbarians were running things from Odo.
No,
The so-called barbarians were in charge.
Can we leave this to another episode?
Exactly.
First, no, because there was until the Viking invasions ended, there were always invasions going on. People could not travel. Central government wasn't possible. Taxation wasn't possible. So there was, writing collapsed. Only the church actually preserved writing. Not to say I think the church was shit.
Matter. Kling. Hey, can you stop the technicalities, the two of you?
It's
we
important.
Have a principle to discuss. No, come on.
You know what we're discussing? Whether or not people are right or wrong, whether or not these Muslims are correct in their interpretation. And you said something that was factually incorrect.
No, I'm not just being glib.
Who would I be?
We do need to
Who would I be if I wasn't correcting my mates as well? I have to be fair here. But anyway, let me so we can agree that you are wrong. Excellent.
No.
Okay, now I want to move on to the final thing, which is the verse of the sword. Now, you're saying that this is in a historical context. Throw it out the window. I mean, the classical Muslim interpretation has been that this verse of the sword is an unconditional command to fight believers, and it abrogated all previous ones. For example, Ibn Abbas, Muhammad's uncle, said, no idolater had any more treaty or promise of safety ever since Surah Abara was revealed. So he's referring to the verse of the sword here.
Okay,
Klingschor
Ibn... Yes, technically, maybe you are correct, but what does it have to do with the reform of Islam in 2012? Whether or not a word in the Quran 1400 years ago was correct or not? Can we concentrate on the issue at hand?
I will tell you. Because what is happening here is that you are distorting facts. You are, I wouldn't say you're lying, but you are saying factually incorrect things in order to achieve your reformation. And I don't think you can do that. You cannot say that this, when we've got so many classical scholars, Ibn Hazm and Al-Kalbi, Ibn Kathir, As-Suyuti, all agreeing that this verse abrogated the previous ones, and that this verse is a Ash-Shafi said that jihad was a collective duty, a universal perpetual war against all non-believers by dint of them being non-believers. Like, you can't just ignore that or brush that under and say, oh, well, look, this modern Muhammad Assad and his interpretation from, 80 years ago said this. No, you can't just ignore it. So I think you're going to have to take a different approach. You can't just either lie or ignore the fact that, these things exist. That these early scholars, very early, like Ibn Abbas, Muhammad's uncle, seemed to think that the verse of the sword abrogated all others, and that it was like universal war against all polytheists and so forth. So I think you're going to have to come to terms with that. I mean, just ignoring it or pretending it doesn't exist is not the approach to take, I don't think.
All right. I feel really bad for you. We covered so much stuff, most of which wasn't even relevant. So what, did you have any comment on anything that was said, Professor? Or Doctor, whatever. Are you still with us?
So,
yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think my point is that we Muslims have some weaknesses. We are backwards in education and our own scriptures. And the people who know the scripture have misled us. So we have problems. So that's why we have this conference this is called brainstorming conference. We'd like to interact people to find the solutions for our backwardness. That's the whole point.
Okay.
All right?
Kling, did you have more?
All right. So I think I have spent almost 4 hours now.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up soon.
We have spent 4 hours.
We're going to wrap it up soon, don't worry.
Okay.
You can kick me off the show now.
I will. But before you go, do you know who?
No, I'm not going to give you. I'm not going to give you the joy.
Do you know who Hypatia of Alexandria was?
Yeah, she was that woman who was massacred by Christians. I don't acknowledge
because she was a pagan woman teacher. The Christians of Alexandria.
Yeah, but that does not. That does not abrogate anything
I've said. They scraped the flesh off her bones with oyster shells while she still lived, and burned all of her pagan books and plays and all of that. So you're full of shit on this point.
No. I'm sorry. You're just anti-theist populist rhetoric.
No, it is not.
You have to actually look at what actually happened within the Roman Empire. One example of them killing a pagan woman does not transpire across.
Just the way they did with the Jews. The Christians were so anti-pagan and anti-Jewish that any learning that evolved from those quarters, they persecuted before the fall of the empire. Yeah, you're gone. Okay, well, now that guy's out of here, we went way into overtime. Doctor, I can't thank you enough for soldiering on as long as you did. Like I say to all of our Muslim or other religious guests, I know it takes a lot of courage to come on a show where the entire panel and many of the guests are offering a counterpoint. You're welcome to come back anytime you like. Like I said, we really appreciate you coming. We hope that even though it got heated, we hope you don't feel bullied or browbeaten too badly. But despite all the heatedness, despite the technical difficulties, you stuck with us, and we really appreciate that. And let me just say in closing, whatever are our disagreements, if what you and your group are doing lead to increased literacy and education standards anywhere in the world, in that capacity, I certainly support you. Now, you can have the last word.
Also,
please.
So you had to read my article called X International Islamic Free University at our website. It gives ideas. And something like that has been established in Jeddah by King Abdullah. It's called King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. It's called KAUST, K-A-U-S-T, KAUST. So we need to have KAUST in every city of the Muslim countries. So that's
by the way, in Saudi we consider it another failed project that they use it to steal public money. Nothing else.
Okay, well we don't want to start a whole ball rolling on this.
But at least I appreciate King Saud for establishing that university.
King Abdullah, I mean. King Abdullah.
Was it? Well, it doesn't matter. Let's not get all Klingschor
It's called
about
King
it.
Abdullah University of Science. So at least students of merit are getting education.
Okay, well, again...
Anyway, that's something I had to give credit where credit is due.
So, thank you to Stop Spamming and Atheist Ghost for joining us. Thank you for everyone who showed up to watch. Thank you in advance to everyone who watches this on YouTube. And to all of our callers, and especially to Dr. Ibrahim B. Syed. Thank you very much. And we will see you all in 2 weeks. Take care. Salam.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So long. Have a nice weekend.
You
have
too,
a nice
sir.
weekend.
Take care. Goodbye.